Chapter 760, Spirit of the Saint Artifact, 2. After absorbing the 3 thumb-sized balls of light, Jianchen returned the ancient jade pendant to his bosom and mumbled to himself, I killed 3 people and obtained 3 points. There's at least 4 or 5,000 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters who are competing, so if I want to truly get into the top 10 without any room for worry, I need to kill 500 people and get 500 points. I'll continue my massacre next. The only difference with the gathering of mercenaries is that it's Radiant Saint Masters and not fighters. With a thought, a large amount of Radiant Saint force quickly condensed into a cloud under him. Just when he wanted to ride the cloud away, he froze. It's the presence of a similar existence. I've actually sensed the presence of something similar to us. In Jianchen's head, the voices of the sword spirits suddenly appeared. It really is the presence of something similar. It can't be wrong, Master. Where is this place and why is there the presence of something similar to us? Ziying's voice appeared in Jianchen's head once again, bearing with it a tone of disbelief. Aya, there's actually another artifact spirit here. Unbelievable. Why would such a high-level artifact spirit appear in a world like this? This spirit seems to have already reached the immortal level. Qing Suo said in Jianchen's head in shock. His lark-like voice sounded like the loveliest melody in the world, which caused Jianchen to become shocked. We're currently inside the space of a saint artifact. Ziying, Qing Suo, perhaps this artifact's given birth to a spirit similar to you? Jianchen was utterly astounded. Who would have thought that when we were asleep, absorbing the energy of the multicolored stone to recover, masters actually entered the space of an artifact? Yes, there indeed exists a spirit, and this spirit is not weak. At least when measured with this world's standards, this spirit is already extremely powerful. The only thing is that because of how it's designed, it can't become an offensive artifact. Looking at it, it seems to be a support artifact. Ziying said. Who would have thought that the saint artifact has actually given birth to a spirit? Quite unexpected. Jianchen sighed emotionally. At the same time, purple and azure qi appeared from Jianchen's head. Above his head, it formed a boy and a girl. The boy was handsome, while the girl was pretty. Standing together, they seemed like a natural-born couple. This was not the first time Jianchen had seen the appearance of Ziying and Qing Suo. However, he could clearly feel that Ziying and Qing Suo's ethereal bodies had become much more tangible than before. Clearly, they had spent this period of time constantly recovering with the help of the multicolored stone. After Ziying and Qing Suo had materialized above Jianchen, they stared into the distant sky together. Shortly afterwards, Ziying gently raised his right hand and surging purple light immediately flowed from his body. It quickly condensed into a purple divine sword in his right hand. The purple sword was 3 meters long, and 3 fingers wide. The hazy sword seemed to be covered in a layer of complicated patterning, which formed a weird image, covering the entire sword. It seemed to contain the truths of the world and the mysteries of the universe, giving off a mysterious presence. As soon as the purple sword condensed, it turned into a purple streak of light, flying into the distance at an unbelievable speed. It disappeared in the next moment, completely exceeding the speed of lightning. Jianchen's pupils constricted suddenly, while he was secretly shocked. The purple sword's speed absolutely stunned him. It was a speed in which no one could dodge. He just struggled to imagine that there was anyone in the world who could dodge the attack of the sword. In the center of the space within the artifact, there was a region isolated by powerful energy. There was a huge palace and current within it. A handsome, middle-aged man in white robes currently sat cross-legged on the ground. Suddenly, the man's eyes snapped open. In the very moment he opened his eyes, the surrounding space began to warp violently. Even the entire palace began to tremble slightly. This is the presence of something similar to me. Has something similar come here? Shock overwhelmed the man's face, before disappearing soon after. In the other region where Jianchen was, Ziying stared at the direction where the purple sword had disappeared off to. He said, although this artifact spirit is quite strong, He's still far from us, unable to sense Qing Suo's or my presence at all. But I've already contacted him. He should arrive soon. Who are you? Where have you come from? As soon as Ziying finished talking, a heavy voice appeared out of nowhere. With the voice, a white-robed man appeared, looking down at the three of them. It was as if he was looking at insignificant ants. He was the spirit of the Origin Saint artifact. Within the artifact, he was the life form that ruled over all. He could control all the energy within the artifact as he wished, so he was naturally arrogant. The man's arrogance made Ziying furrow his eyebrows slightly. Ziying immediately sneered and said in disdain, "Even a mere immortal-level artifact spirit dares to be so arrogant before me? You're looking to die." An absolute sword chi radiated from Ziying. It turned to something like a shapeless storm in the sky, rampaging in the space of the artifact brazenly. The man's expression changed greatly and his cold gaze was instantly replaced with great fear. He quickly retreated, while his gaze towards Ziying was filled with terror. The middle-aged man was the spirit of the Saint artifact. His each and every move could influence a change on the space within the artifact. Currently, the entire space trembled violently, as if there was a huge earthquake. Several mountain ranges began to collapse, greatly alarming all the competitors. They had no idea what was going on. In the City of God, there was a huge, 10-meter-wide ball of white light at the very peak of the castle headquarters. The white ball was completely condensed from the surrounding radiant saint force, and it was extremely pure. In the center of the ball was the powerful saint artifact that almost all the people in the City of God knew about. The saint artifact was called the Origin Saint artifact by the people of the Radiant Saint Master Union. It had existed since the ancient times, silently accompanying the Radiant Saint Master Union for countless years. It was kept like this since the very start, without any changes over the years whatsoever. However, at this very moment, the ball of white light that enveloped the artifact began to tremble violently. A golden light could be vaguely seen inside, constantly leaping about, causing the surrounding radiant saint force to become extremely unstable. Even the headquarters of the Union was affected, where the huge castle trembled slightly. It caused a large amount of dust to fall. The trembling of the castle alarmed everyone inside it. Immediately, a large number of white-robed radiant saint masters ran out of the castle, staring at the shaking saint artifact at the very top. No one knew what was happening. At this moment, a dozen or so streaks of white light flew out from the top of the castle. It was the president of the Union and the dozen or so elders, all floating on white clouds and staring at the shaking artifact in shock. Soon afterwards, a few people appeared beside the president without any sound. They all stared sternly at the shaking saint artifact, and along with their gazes, there was deep doubt. None of them understood what was going on before them. They had no idea as to what happened at all. Just what has happened? Why is the saint artifact, something that's never changed before, suddenly trembling? The person who asked this was an extremely old man. His voice was husky, and he seemed powerless. If Jian Shen was here, he would definitely recognize the old man as the person who used the cloth to wipe the chairs and tables inside the Radiant Saint Tower. Perhaps something happened within the artifact? The president of the Union asked with a deep voice. The light within his eyes flickered, while his complexion varied. No one replied to the president, because none of them were sure about what was going on. The saint artifact had already existed for countless years, and nothing like this had ever occurred. The artifact did not tremble for long, slowly settling down after a few seconds and returning to how it was before. However, the effect it had brought to all the people within the Union was irremovable. Within the saint artifact, the middle-aged man had already retreated to a place 500 meters away. He stared at Ziying in horror, not because of how strong Ziying was, but because he felt a vast pressure that originated from the spirit from Ziying. This pressure caused him to become scared, it caused him to become cowardly, and it even gave him the notion that he could not resist at all. The middle-aged man even felt a misperception, where it seemed as if Ziying only needed a single thought for his spirit to disperse and for his consciousness to disappear, making the Origin Saint artifact return to something without a spirit. The purple-robed young man seemed like a monarch, while he was only a subject. If the monarch wanted the subject to die, the subject could only die. Who are you? Why are you so powerful? The man was extremely shocked, clearly quite terrified too. He was no longer as arrogant as before. Ziying glared at the man and yelled loudly, "Even a mere immortal-level artifact spirit dares to be disrespectful towards me?" With that, an even greater pressure radiated from Ziying's body. It only focused on the spirit, a pressure that only the spirit could feel. The originally pale face of the man became even whiter. He stumbled a few steps backwards, while his entire body began to shake. The pressure had already deeply infiltrated his spirit, causing him to feel terror in the very depths of his spirit. He felt like his spiritual body was about to collapse. Meanwhile, in the man's head, a few extremely unfamiliar images appeared. He saw two divine swords, one purple and one azure, standing erect between the earth and the heavens, radiating with dazzling light. They split the heavens and cut open the earth, destroying plenty of stars and slaughtering countless immortals. The corpses left behind radiated with a powerful pressure, floating about in the infinite starry sky. To the man, each corpse was an existence unimaginable in strength, just a casual wave of their hand possessed the power to destroy worlds. Even the droplets of golden blood, floating in the void, seemed to possess a great energy, capable of easily wiping himself out. Chapter 761, The Submission of the Artifact Spirit Plop. Suddenly, the middle-aged man fell onto his knees. He began to beg Ziying on his arms, "Overlord, please spare me, please spare me." This one blindly offended the Overlord. "Overlord, please be merciful and spare this one's life." At that moment, the man had already understood. The purple-robed young man transformed from the sword spirit was once an unbelievably powerful existence, a level of power beyond his imagination. Before him, he did not even have the right to help Ziying wear shoes, so he most definitely could not offend him. Ziying slowly retracted his might and stared coldly at the man. "Get up. I'll let you go this time. It won't happen a second time. Thank you, Overlord, thank you for sparing me." The man behaved as if he had gained amnesty, slowly rising from the ground. In his head, he could not help but think of the unfamiliar images that had suddenly appeared before. He knew that everything was real, and knew even better that the two purple and azure divine swords that seemed to split the heavens were the couple in azure and purple robes before him. This caused man's terror and fear for the sword spirits to reach an absolute limit. Even though he was in his own world, even though he was something similar to a god in this world, the man did not dare to let the notion of resisting cross his mind in front of the two sword spirits. Even though he knew that the two sword spirits had already become much weaker than before and no longer his opponent, he did not dare to show any resistance at all. All there was in his mind was extremely powerful dread and great fear. Ziying stared at the trembling man for a while, before losing interest soon after. He turned around to Qing Sua, who was in an azure dress. His eyes were filled with a soft light and he said, "Qing Sua, let's return. Master, we'll let you handle the rest of it." "Yes." Qing Sua nodded slightly. Afterwards, she turned into a ray of light along with Ziying at the same time, disappearing into Jian Chen's head. Discovering an artifact spirit here earlier had indeed surprised them, but that was only surprise. With their past statuses and strength, they completely looked down on the spirit of the origin artifact. Hearing Ziying say, "Return," the man finally relaxed from his extremely anxious state. However, before he could become delighted, it scared the man greatly once again when he heard Ziying say, "Master." Even his body began to tremble greatly, his gaze towards Jianchen filled with dread. He can become the master of the two peerless divine swords. He mustn't be simple. I can't offend him no matter what. Even if he's weak, I can't afford to underestimate him at all. The man warned himself in his mind. He had already become completely terrified from the image that had appeared in his mind. All those that were related to the sword spirits had already entered his list of people he could not afford to offend. The man glanced at Jian Chen in some dread, before carefully walking up. He made a low bow to Jian Shen and said extremely courteously, "This one greets the overlord." Jian Shen observed the artifact spirit with a weird gaze, but inside, he found that it was quite funny by the way the spirit referred to him. However, Jian Shen did go ahead and rectify it. Instead, he asked, "What do I call you?" Responding to the overlord, "This one does not have a name yet, but they all call me Lord Artifact Spirit." The man said. "Them." A sliver of interest flashed across Jian Shen's eyes. "Who are you referring to by they?" Responding to the overlord, "They are the presidents of the Radiant Saint Master Union." The man said. Jian Shen pondered for a while and did not continue with the topic of conversation. He stared brightly at the man and said, "My purpose of coming this time is to obtain origin energy to reach Class 7 as a Radiant Saint Master. Since you're the artifact spirit, you must be able to control the origin energy." Hearing that, the sliver of a troubled expression appeared on the man's face. He said, "The overlord may not know that all the origin energy in the saint artifact is sealed up by a powerful barrier. Although this one is in fact the artifact spirit and can indeed control everything within this space, this barrier has already existed for a length that I don't even know, and is extremely tough. Even if this one uses all the energy within the artifact space, this one is unable to break this barrier." Hearing that, Jian Shen furrowed his eyebrows and frowned slightly. Perhaps he realized that Jian Shen was unhappy. The man hurriedly followed up, "Overlord, although this one is unable to break through the barrier, it opens up once every 50 years. There's only one more year before it opens the next time. When it does open, the overlord can absorb the origin energy." Hearing that, Jian Shen sighed secretly inside. It seemed that if he wanted to reach Class 7, he needed to follow the rules of the Union and take it a step at a time. Jian Shen bid farewell to the middle-aged man and departed on a white cloud. He flew into the distance, continuing to find competitors to obtain points. 50 kilometers in front of Jian Shen, there were 5 white-robed Radiant Saint Masters on a cloud, flying towards Jian Shen. Of the 5 people, 2 were middle-aged men while the other 3 were old men. They were all from clans that originated from a king's city in the Holy Empire. "This time, we'll probably be able to even fight one of the 10 great Radiant Saint Masters with the 5 of us working together. Even if we can't win, fleeing isn't a problem. Once we meet lone travelers or smaller groups, move immediately and take all their points from them. We need to try as hard as we can to push one of us into the top 10. The speaker was an old man, who was very confident in the strength of the people with him. This was because all 5 of them had reached level 3 in Radiant Arts, and if they worked together, there was no problem even if they encountered experts at level 4. "I hope this happens. But this space inside the artifact is just too big. We've already traveled for over 20 kilometers, and we haven't even found a single person." One of the middle-aged men was unhappy, which he grumbled. "Look, isn't there a person in front?" Suddenly, the other middle-aged man revealed an expression of joy. He cried out with his hand pointed into the distance. Hearing that, all the people raised their heads and looked in front. Before them, there was a white streak of light, quickly approaching where they were. With this, the 5 people who were lamenting over the fact that they could not find anyone earlier immediately became happy. One of the old men hurriedly said, "There's only one person. We can't let this fish escape. Everyone hurry and encircle him first so he can't run away." The 5 of them did not hesitate at all, immediately speeding up into the distance, rushing at the Radiant Saint Master head-on. The lone person clearly discovered them, but there was no change to the speed at which he advanced. He remained on his original path, flying over from the distance at a speed not too fast or slow. Very soon, the group of 5 surrounded the lone Radiant Saint Master. At the same time, a layer of Radiant Saint armor condensed from Radiant Saint force appeared on them, tightly wrapping them inside it, only leaving a space for their eyes. Jian Shen stared at the 5 people around him calmly and a cold smile formed on his face. He said, "Sirs, what are you trying to do?" "What are we trying to do?" "Huh, what do you think we're trying to do?" "Brat, I won't bother to say all that nonsense. I just advise you to forfeit here. It'll save you some physical pain." An old man stared at Jian Chen coldly, laughing aloud. "Overlord, do you want this one to give these people that dare to offend you a solid punishment?" Jian Chen heard the artifact spirit's voice, which carried some anger. The 5 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters around Jian Chen would never think that not only did they offend someone they could not afford to offend with what they had done, they had even angered the spirit of the Origin Saint artifact. Jian Chen shook his head gently and mumbled in a way as if he was talking to himself, "No need. You don't need to interfere with what I do, just do what you need to do. In a while, if they face death, send them out immediately." "Yes, Overlord." The artifact spirit replied courteously. He went with exactly what Jian Chen said, as if Jian Chen was his master. "Brat, what are you mumbling? Have you properly thought over what I said? If you don't forfeit in 3 seconds, don't blame us for being impolite." A middle-aged man said rather impatiently. If it were not for the fact that they needed to save as much energy as possible, the 5 of them would have moved against Jian Chen long ago. Jian Chen stared at the people around him with a sneer and said coldly, "Even you want to try get me, Yang Yutian, to forfeit? A fool's dream." Jian Chen grabbed at the empty space and in an extremely short amount of time, he condensed 5 Radiant Saint swords, which radiated with powerful energy ripples. "What? You're Yang Yutian?" The 5 people's expressions changed greatly, staring at Jian Chen disbelief, which carried a great amount of shock along with it. The name Yang Yutian was like thunder to their ears. Currently in all of City of God, the name Yang Yutian was not unfamiliar to all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, because he was a miraculous personage among the Radiant Saint Masters. Not only did he reach Class 6 at an age of 24, his control of radiant arts had already reached an extremely great level. On Fragrance River outside the City of God, he once slaughtered over 30 Heaven Saint Masters all by himself, stunning all of the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. Jian Chen did not give them a chance to regret or beg for forgiveness. With a fierce flash of light through his eyes, the 5 Radiant Saint sword turned into streaks of white light, shooting towards the 5 people. The 5 people were quite frightened by the name Jian Chen had mentioned. They had become slightly lost, so the Radiant Saint sword landed firmly on their chests. Spurt. All 5 of them spat out a mouth of blood, knocked backwards by the momentum of the swords. Their faces had already paled. Although they had the Radiant Saint armor, it was already covered in web-like cracks on their chest. In the end, with a bang, the armor on the 5 of them all shattered from Jian Chen's blow. Chapter 762. Encountering a beast horde. The 5 Radiant Saint Masters were knocked flying backwards as they spurted with blood from Jian Chen's attack, while the clouds that supported them in the sky disappeared. It caused them to fall along a 50-meter-long parabolic route, landing heavily on the ground. The 5 Radiant Saint Masters did not have bodies as tough as fighters. Falling from over 30 meters high, even if they did not die, almost all of their bones were broken. The great pain even sucked away their strength to talk, and their pale faces all became a reddish purple from the fall. It was unbearable. In their whole lives, they had never experienced such pain. Jian Chen stared coldly at the 5 Radiant Saint Masters on the floor in great pain, but he did not feel any pity at all. With a thought, another 5 Radiant Saint swords condensed in his hand, and with a swing, the 5 swords turned into a streak of silvery white light, flying towards the 5 of them like lightning bolts. This time, the 5 people no longer had any power to resist. They could only watch the 5 swords strike their chests helplessly. In that very moment, they had never felt death so close, even though they were inside the artifact and could not die. However, when they faced it personally like this, they still felt a dread of passing away. The Radiant Saint swords advanced like a hot knife through butter, mercilessly piercing the 5 of them in the chest. However, just before the sharp tip of the swords had completely penetrated their bodies, 5 huge pillars of light descended from the sky, enveloping their bodies and disappearing with them, while the swords under Jian Chen's control were directly crushed by the energy of the pillars of light in the very moment they had appeared. In the blink of an eye, the 5 people disappeared at the edge of death, only leaving behind 5 thumb-sized specks of light floating midair. This artifact spirit really is strong. He's actually able to save these people in such a crucial moment, and even the timing is perfect. I wonder how strong this artifact spirit is in this space. Jian-Shen thought as he looked at where the 5 people had disappeared. His opinion of the artifact spirit had improved once again. Afterwards, Jian-Shen arrived before the 5 specks of floating light. He pulled out the ancient jade pendant from his bosom and absorbed all the specks. They were the so-called points, and were rather like the tokens obtained by killing people in the elimination competition in the gathering of mercenaries, though the only difference was that one was tangible, while the other was ethereal, as if was produced by the artifact. Every person would start off with 1 point, and then increase it by killing other competitors, while the ancient jade pendant was the item to store it all. In the blink of an eye, half a day passed. In that time, Jian-Shen had already traversed hundreds of kilometers at a steady pace on his cloud, discovering many places with marks of battle. There was quite a lot of blood at the places, indicating that many Radiant Saint Masters had met in such places, where they then battled. Within the half a day, Jian-Shen also encountered a few groups of Radiant Saint Masters, one that had as many as 7. He had even encountered 2 people who traveled alone just like him. As a result of these encounters, Jian-Shen's original 8 points had already reached over 40. Jian-Shen flew in the air on a cloud condensed from Radiant Saint Force. He already extended his presence to the limit, enveloping a radius of 20 kilometers to search for competitors. At that moment, Jian-Shen paused slightly. He glared fixedly in the distance, his eyebrows furrowed. He saw that over 30 kilometers away, a black cloud quickly floated over in the distance. In front of the black cloud, there were several Radiant Saint Masters on white clouds with expressions of unconcealed fear, currently fleeing for their lives. The black cloud chasing behind them was not a real dark cloud, but rather a flock of dark, flying magical beasts, totaling to an insurmountable number. Class 4 crow beasts. Isn't there just too many? Jian-Shen focused his gaze at the cloud formed from magical beasts and a sliver of shock appeared on his face. He had killed plenty of Class 4 magical beasts in his life, but this was the first time Jian-Shen had ever encountered so many at one time. At this moment, the Radiant Saint Masters chased by the countless crow beasts discovered Jian-Shen. They immediately changed their directions, heading directly for Jian-Shen, wanting to pull him in too. Seeing this, Jian-Shen's lips curled into a vague sneer. He did not retreat, and instead traveled forwards. The cloud beneath him flew at a steady pace towards the crow beasts. The Radiant Saint Masters pursued by the crow beasts all revealed expressions of joy when they saw what Jian-Shen was doing. This person clearly doesn't know how powerful these crows are. Not only did he not escape, he's flying towards us. Is he looking to die? That idiot probably thinks all these crows are Class 1 and are easy to kill. Even if they are Class 1 magical beasts, there's thousands of them, or even tens of thousands. It's not that easy, not to mention the fact that all of them are Class 4, with some Class 5 ones in between. Even if Kara Liwei, the one ranked first among all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, encountered so many crow beasts, it's certain death. Is this person so confident that he thinks he's stronger than Kara Liwei? Whatever. Since he has no idea of danger and is flying over, we'll get him to stall the crows for some time. It'll give us some time to escape. You're right, I just hope that the person isn't too weak and can keep the crows busy for a little longer, so that we have more time to find some other Radiant Saint Masters. Once there's enough people, perhaps we might be able to resist this horde. The Radiant Saint Masters all sneered. At the same time, they began to charge up power, ready to charge off with their greatest speed once the person ahead had gained the attention of the crows behind, ready to pull open a great distance when the time was right. The reason they had prepared beforehand was because they were confident the incoming person was unable to stall the crows for too long. Soon, the Radiant Saint Masters approached Jian-Shen. In order to encourage Jian-Shen, a person cried out from far away, "Sir, please help us out. We'll work together with all our strength to kill these crows." As he spoke, powerful radiant saint force had already gathered before him. He seemed like he really was ready to go all out in a battle to the death with the crows. Jian Shen did not even glance at the radiant saint masters, focusing on the black mass of crows behind them. Radiant saint force from the surroundings had already begun gathering around Jian Shen quickly. Seeing how Jian Shen really had no idea of danger and wanted to fight against the crows, the radiant saint masters all sneered inwardly. As they brushed past Jian Shen, the radiant saint force that they had gathered immediately coalesced around their feet, abruptly increasing their flight speed, flying past Jian Shen in a flash and fleeing into the distance. Jian Shen slowly closed his eyes and began to pour all his strength into gathering radiant saint force. It was as if he did not see the radiant saint masters who had rushed past him like a violent gust of wind at all. Suddenly, the originally calm radiant saint force in the surroundings became violent. Streaks of visible light began to pour inwards from all directions, all pooling in front of Jian Shen. At that very moment, the radiant saint force in a radius of 5 kilometers began to surge, like a storm, creating wild gusts of wind in the surroundings. Although the crows were not strong, only class 4, there were just too many, so even Jian Shen needed to be careful in facing them. Feeling the violent motion of the surrounding radiant saint force, the fleeing radiant saint masters were all stunned. A sliver of shock appeared on their faces, they could not help but come to a stop. They all just stared at Jian Shen in astoundment from several kilometers away in the air. He actually moved all the radiant saint force in the radius of 5 kilometers all by himself. How is this possible? That speed at gathering radiant saint force is just too fast. It's definitely not something a class 6 radiant saint master can do. Is he perhaps class 7? Just who is that person? He's actually so strong. Even Kara Liwei probably isn't as great as him. Even Kara Liwei's speed at coalescing radiant saint force is not at such a level. The radiant saint masters cried out in surprise in the distance. Currently, a huge change occurred to their gazes towards Jian Shen. The flock of crows were already less than 300 meters away from Jian Shen. They directly flew towards him, flooding at him. At the same time, an extremely powerful ball of radiant saint force had been gathered around him. It radiated with dazzling white light, like a sun, paling everything else around it. Radiance burst. With a cold voice from within the ball of radiant saint force, the radiant saint force began to separate and gather into soybean-sized droplets, floating around Jian Shen. Each droplet rippled with powerful energy, filled with a sharp intent. Just when the crows were 50 meters from Jian Shen extended a finger from within the droplets of radiant saint force. The droplets were like countless sharp arrows, shooting towards the crows as tiny streaks of white light. When the droplets collided with the crows, it directly punched a hole through them, before continuing onto the crows behind without any decrease in power. Every droplet contained a powerful energy, able to threaten Heaven's Saint Masters and heavily injure Earth's Saint Masters. Even though the crows had bodies of magical beasts, there were only class 4 after all. Before the tiny droplets of energy, their feathers, objects that were considered to be extremely tough even to regular fighters, were unable to block anything, becoming as fragile as tofu. Countless droplets pierced through the dense flock of crows. Those that were closer to the front immediately had countless holes punched through their bodies, falling out of the sky as they screeched unpleasantly. Bright red blood and black feathers covered the skies, as if it had begun to rain blood. Chapter 763, Crow King. Thousands of crows already surrounded Jian Shen. From a distance, it seemed like a huge black sphere, floating in the sky and completely swallowing up Jian Shen. It was impossible to see what was going on inside from the outside. The Radiant Saint Masters stared fixedly in the direction of Jian Shen at what was happening from several kilometers away. Their expressions were rather complicated. They too had never thought that a random competitor they encountered would possess such great strength, be able to fend off thousands of class 4 magical beasts all by himself. Even if this leaked outside, no one would believe it. Just who is that person? Why is he so strong? He can't be nobody. Can he be Jaxi, second among the 10 great Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters? Among the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, probably only Jaxi has such strength. That's wrong. I've personally witnessed Jaxi's strength. Although it's very strong, it's not this powerful. Also, Jaxi's speed at gathering Radiant Saint Force is far from being this fast. Who cares who he is? Even if he's this strong, he's only a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. He definitely won't survive when surrounded by so many crows. You're right. This amount of Class 4 crows is not something a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master can handle, not to mention that fact that there's some Class 5 crows ones hidden inside too. Unless he's Class 7, the best thing he can do is just fleeing for his life like us. That may not be the case though. Haven't you all seen the droplets of blood raining down and the crows that have fallen from the sky? It's only been so long, and over 100 crows have already been killed. And all of these crows had countless holes in them, while quite a few have basically disintegrated. Maybe this person really can kill all these crows if given some more time. If you don't believe it, just watch. The Radiant Saint Masters became quiet, staring at where Jian Chen was with all their attention. However, as they saw the crows constantly fall from the sky like rain, shock silently pervaded the depths of their spirits. If it were them, they strongly believed it was impossible to be able to kill the crows so quickly when surrounded by so many. The Radiant Saint Force in the surroundings gathered steadily towards Jian Chen, constantly turning into soybean-sized droplets in Jian Chen's hand, before shooting off in all directions. The Arte, Radiance Burst, was cast consecutively, without any pauses in between. At this moment, Jian Chen was surrounded by thousands of crows, but he remained calm. There was nothing in a radius of 15 meters around him. The crows were unable to charge into the area, because once they entered it, the seemingly airtight radiance burst would pierce thousands of holes into them, absolutely obliterating their corpses. Currently, Jian Chen's slender figure that floated in the air seemed to become a machine of slaughter. Every second, there would be even more crows that would fall to his attacks. The ground below had already been dyed blood red, while the densely packed corpses of the crows had formed a thick mat on the ground. The sharp smell of blood pervaded the air. The death of their peers did not make the crows retreat. The smell of blood instead made the crows even more frenzied. They did not fear death, shooting towards Jian Chen like moths to a candle. The crows decreased at a visible rate. At this very moment, a dozen or so relatively larger Class 5 crows suddenly screeched together, and shot towards Jian Chen with an imposing manner in spite of the radiance burst. Their bodies like tough metal, producing clings and clangs as the droplets collided with them. They actually resisted the attacks. Although the attacks could not harm them, the collisions created a very powerful resistance towards their advance. They could advance no further after they arrived 10 meters away from Jian Chen. A cold light flashed across Jian Chen's eyes, and the power of the radiance burst abruptly increased. It became over twice as powerful than before, and with that, the dozen or so Class 5 crows were no longer able to remain as calm as before when receiving the attacks. Blood would splatter in the shapes of blooming flowers as every soybean-sized droplet collided with them splatter. It was unable to pierce through them, though it was enough to heavily injure Tam. Soon after, the dozen or so Class 5 crows ended up the same as their peers. Their bodies were in pieces and they fell out of the sky, riddled with holes. Caw! Suddenly, an ear-piercing cry reverberated from within the flock of crows. It was extremely sharp, able to puncture metal and destroy rocks, and enough for people's eardrums to ache. With the cry, all the crows around Jian Chen behaved as if they had received an order. They all gave up their attempts of attack, quickly dispersing into the distance with the flap of their wings. Jian Chen was no longer surrounded by a flock of crows, visible once again from the outside. The surrounding crows all backed off to a distance 3 kilometers away, staring at Jian Chen with hostility. With their retreat, an ink-black, 10-meter-wide crow king appeared. Its scarlet eyes were filled with bloodthirstiness and cruelty, staring viciously at Jian Chen. Class 6. Jian Chen stared coldly at the Crow King. He had discovered its presence long ago, though Jian Chen just looked down upon a mere Class 6 magical beast. Caw. Suddenly, the Crow King emitted a huge pressure. It turned into a streak of black light, hurling itself towards Jian Chen. The bodies of Class 6 magical beasts were extremely strong, much more powerful than Radiant Saint Masters. If Jian Chen were to continue using Radiance Burst, it would only tickle the Crow King undoubtedly, unable to pose any threat at all. Jian Chen opened his hand and a Radiant Saint sword immediately formed, shooting towards the Crow King as a white streak of light. Bang! The sword's collision produced an extremely powerful sound. Not only did the impact and its energy ripples stop the Crow King's advance, it even knocked it backwards. Blood had been drawn on its head. Jian Chen became stern and mumbled to himself, "This Crow King really does have a strong body. My attack that can heavily injure Heaven Saint Masters only scratched it. Looks like ordinary attacks aren't enough harm it." The Crow King seemed to be enraged, cawing loudly at the sky. It opened its beak and a huge ball of violent energy shot towards Jian Chen like a flash of lightning. Jian Chen remained calm and chanted with a deep voice, "Radiant Saint Shield." The surrounding Radiant Saint force gathered at an unbelievable speed, forming a 2-meter-wide shield, blocking the ball of energy spat out by the Crow King. At the same time, Jian Chen extended a finger at the sky and a gleam of light flashed violently across his eyes. He cried out, "Judgment Sword." All the Radiant Saint force in the radius of 5 kilometers seemed to experience an extremely powerful suction, surging quickly towards Jian Chen. It all coalesced to form a huge, 10-meter-long sword, radiating with dazzling light, while within it hid the ripples of terrifying energy. Before it, even Heaven-tier battle skills cast by Heaven Saint Masters paled in comparison. Judgment Sword, it's actually the Judgment Sword, one of the 3 great arts. Only Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters can cast it. He's actually Class 7. He's Yang Yutian. I heard that Yang Yutian, with his strength as a Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, can use the 3 great arts which can only supposedly be learnt by Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters. There's also rumors that Jian Chen cast the forbidden arte, God's Descent, on the inky stratus on Fragrance River, and killed several dozen Heaven Saint Masters. With the appearance of Judgment Sword, the Radiant Saint Masters who observed from a distance all paled in shock. Caw! The Crow King cried out weirdly and it stared at the 10-meter-long sword above Jian Chen with its scarlet eyes in dread. It could feel the power of destruction within the sword, which even made it feel a sliver of fear. Shortly afterwards, the Crow King immediately flew backwards, flapping its wings to consecutively shoot huge blades of wind towards Jian Chen, in attempt to keep Jian Chen busy and make time to escape. Looking the dozen or so wind blades, a vicious gleam of light flashed across Jian Chen's eyes. The Judgment Sword shot out with a huge bang, destroying the dozen or so wind blades that were approaching Jian Chen, and afterwards, the sword turned into a silvery white streak of light, chasing after the Crow King with an unbelievable speed. The sword passed through the Crow King's body, completely ending the Crow King's life before disappearing into the horizon, shooting off to somewhere unknown. Caw! Before death, the Crow King cried out sadly and unwillingly. The cry reverberated across the entire sky, spreading far and wide. Afterwards, its huge body collided heavily with the ground, raising dust and dirt. Caw! Suddenly, an earth-shaking cry reverberated in the distance. Filled with sorrow and anger, it pierced through numerous mountains and rivers, echoing about in the area. With the sound, an extremely great presence appeared in the distance. Several kilometers away, the Radiant Saint Masters paled immediately. The sound was like a huge hammer smashing against their chest, causing them to spit out a mouthful of blood as they became sheet white. Jian Chen became solemn. His calm gaze became a glare at that very moment, staring fixedly into the distance. He muttered with a deep voice, "Class 7. Chapter 764. The vital energies in the blood. Jian Chen revealed a seriousness he rarely showed. From the sound, he could already tell that it was an extremely powerful Class 7 magical beast, at least as powerful as a human 5th heavenly layer Saint Ruler. Why is there such a powerful magical beast here? Jian Chen was secretly shocked. The magical beast that had just caught out was clearly a companion of the Crow King he had killed, or maybe even an elder, but he knew that he had already aggravated the Class 7 magical beast in the distance. The Radiant Saint Masters standing far away all became sheet white. They became absolutely terrified. The earth-shaking cry earlier had already filled them with fear. Currently, their hearts were drowned in endless dread. It caused their bodies to shake slightly, with their legs trembling. This must be a Class 7 magical beast. Leave, let's quickly leave. What are you all staying for, do you want to die? A Radiant Saint Master said with a trembling voice, before immediately condensing Radiant Saint Force into a cloud, stepping onto it to escape. The other Radiant Saint Masters all returned to their senses one after another. Thinking about how terrifying a Class 7 magical beast was, they could not help but shudder. They did not dare to stay any longer, leaving the area immediately at their greatest speed. Seeing their fleeing figures in the distance, a gleam of cold light flashed across Jian Chen's eyes. He did not plan on letting them go. Although the Class 7 magical beast pressured Jian Chen slightly, it was definitely not as bad as the Radiant Saint Masters fleeing and spreading the news. However, just as Jian Chen wanted to pursue them, the remaining crows in the surroundings all caught out angrily, staring at Jian Chen with their bloodshot eyes. They shot towards Jian Chen with their greatest speed, clearly wanting to avenge the Class 6 magical beast. Since you all want to die that badly, let me help you out. A powerful killing intent flashed across Jian Chen's eyes and the droplets from the radiance burst immediately gathered before him, shooting towards the surrounding crows with lightning speed. A while later, when Jian Chen had killed all the crows, the Radiant Saint Masters had already escaped successfully, all nowhere to be seen. Below him, the corpses of the crows had already formed a small mountain, while the blood on the ground formed streams. The air was full with the sharp smell of blood. Jian Chen slowly dispersed the Radiant Saint force he had gathered, glancing at the direction in which the Radiant Saint Masters had ran off. He said softly, "You're lucky this time. The next time I meet you all will be the time when I send all of you off." Jian Chen arrived before the Class 6 Crow King's corpse, which was several dozens of meters away. A Radiant Saint sword coalesced in his right hand, and he used it to stab the Crow King's body. He extracted a fist-sized monster core from the Crow King's body with practiced movements. Looking at the Class 6 monster core, a vague smile finally formed on Jian Chen's face. He had sensed that a Class 6 magical beast was hidden in the flock of crows long ago, while his purpose was actually for the Class 6 monster core. Almost all the Class 6 magical beasts gathered in the depths of the Cross Mountains, which was the reason for the lack of Class 6 magical beasts on the Tianyuan continent. As a result, Class 6 monster cores were extremely valuable, and with the deficiency in the continent, it was basically an object of high demand but no supply. I wonder if Mingdong successfully broken through to Heaven's Saint Master. If he has, then this monster core is perfect for him. Jian Chen mumbled to himself. Although he had plenty of Class 5 monster cores in his space ring, monster cores of such a level were no longer as effective for Heaven's Saint Masters anymore. Only Class 6 monster cores were useful for powerful people with such strength. Shortly afterwards, Jian Chen furrowed his eyebrows slightly. His face scrunched up to a vexed expression, mumbling to himself, "It's a pity that the space rings have been sealed by the power of the Saint artifact and can't be opened no matter what. Once the number of Class 6 monster cores increases, it'll be very difficult to carry around." Speaking, Jian Chen seemed to think of something. His eyes suddenly shone. "Since the space rings are sealed by the power of the Saint artifact, can I get the artifact spirit to undo the seal?" Jian Chen immediately became worked up. He called out with a deep voice, "Is the artifact spirit here?" "Overlord, this one is here." As soon as Jian Chen finished speaking, he heard the artifact spirit's voice. A white-robed, middle-aged man had already appeared next to Jian Chen without any sound. Artifact Spirit, are you able to undo the seal on my space ring? Jian Chen said to the Artifact Spirit, while anticipation rippled in his heart. Only after hearing what Jian Chen had said did the Artifact Spirit remember that the Overlord space ring was still sealed by him. His expression immediately changed, and in fear he said, "Please do not become angered, Overlord. This one did not seal Overlord space ring on purpose. This one will remove the seal right now." The Artifact Spirit immediately removed the seal from Jian Chen's space ring. Checking his space ring, Jian Chen discovered that the powerful energy sealing the ring had indeed already disappeared. This delighted him immediately. With this, did it not mean that he could put all the things he had obtained inside it? Also, the problem with how monster cores were inconvenient to carry around was completely solved. Jian Chen immediately placed the monster core into the ring, before looking to the middle-aged man. He said, "Artifact Spirit, are there also Class 7 magical beasts in the Saint Artifact?" The Artifact Spirit did not dare to ignore Jian Chen's question. He immediately said, "Yes, Overlord, there are indeed many Class 7 magical beasts in this space. There are even a few Class 8 magical beasts." "What? Class 8? Jian Chen was astounded, no longer able to maintain his calm. This was because Class 8 magical beasts were existences equivalent to Saint Kings, and from what the Artifact Spirit had said, there were actually more than one Class 8 magical beast. It was inconceivable. Just how did these powerful magical beasts get in here? Jian Chen asked immediately. He was filled with a strong curiosity towards the whole matter. "Overlord, this Saint Artifact has already existed for countless years. Before this one had even gained intelligence, there were already some magical beasts in here. They lived here and cultivated here, so after some time, their strength would naturally increase. Those Class 7 and Class 8 magical beasts in here currently only obtained their strength after cultivating for an extremely long time in this space, and also gave birth to many later generations." The Artifact Spirit explained to Jian Chen. "Then do they ever attack the competing Radiant Saint Masters?" Jian Chen asked. "Overlord, these Class 7 and Class 8 magical beasts have already been sealed up by this one, so they're unable to threaten the competitors. Only after all the competitors leave are these seals released, where they recover their freedom." Towards Jian Chen's questions, the Artifact Spirit said all he knew, and said it without any reserve. He did not hide anything at all. The matter of sealing the magical beasts was an agreement the Artifact Spirit had with the past president of the Union. Jian Chen secretly relaxed. Before, the great cry had indeed pressured him slightly, because Jian Chen could feel the strength of the Class 7 crow. Even with his strength as a fighter, he did not believe he could defeat it. At this very moment, strands of red gases suddenly began to gather around Jian Chen from the ground full of blood, before all disappearing into the white tiger which slept on Jian Chen's shoulder. Seeing this, Jian Chen was stunned. He clearly had no idea as to what was happening. A gleam of light flashed across the Artifact Spirit's eyes, who was standing to the side. He immediately stared at the white tiger on Jian Chen's shoulder and said, "Overlord, the magical beast on your shoulder is not simple. It can actually draw out the vital energies bonded to the blood of magical beasts and absorb it." Jian Chen immediately tried sensing it attentively, and indeed, he could feel that there were traces of vital energies in the red gases floating from the blood. The white tiger is already at the edge of breaking through. Perhaps the vital energies hidden within the blood of magical beasts can assist it? Jian Chen understood everything very soon, where he immediately experienced a wave of uncontrollable excitement. "Overlord, I can feel that after the magical beast on your shoulder absorbs these vital energies, it's actually growing stronger at an extremely slow rate. If it absorbs enough vital energies, it'll reach Class 6 at an earlier time," the Artifact Spirit said. What the Artifact Spirit had said affirmed Jian Chen's guess. Jian Chen dismissed the Artifact Spirit with a sliver of excitement, which he then stood there silently, all by himself, slowly waiting for the white tiger to absorb all the floating vital energies from the magical beast blood. Very soon, the vital energies from the Class 4 crow blood were absorbed by the white tiger. At moment, a ball of red gas, several hundred times denser than before, floated over nearby, and slowly was absorbed by the white tiger. This was the vital energies of the Class 6 Crow King. Jianchen could clearly feel that the vital energies of the Class 6 magical beast were much more helpful to the white tiger than the vital energies from the thousands of Class 4 magical beasts, and it was much more pure. Looks like I need to go hunting for some Class 6 magical beasts to help the white tiger break through. Jianchen muttered to himself. After waiting for a while, Jianchen immediately left the area when the vital energies stopped being absorbed, collecting all the monster cores of the crows with his strength as a fighter. With the artifact spirit covering him, Jianchen did not fear that his strength as a fighter would be exposed, unless the other competitors directly saw it. In the following days, Jianchen collected points as he hunted for magical beasts, using the vital energies hidden in the beast blood to assist the white tiger break through. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed, and in those 5 days, the number of Class 6 magical beasts that had been slaughtered by Jianchen's hands had already reached a dozen or so, with even more Class 5 and Class 4 magical beasts. Not only did he obtain quite a few Class 6 monster cores, the sleeping white tiger also absorbed a large amount of vital energies as it broke through, causing it to glow with a soft, white light all over. The white light constantly became stronger as more vital energies was absorbed. However, some of the Class 6 magical beasts slaughtered by Jianchen had some supporters. Some of them were the descendants of Class 7 magical beasts, while some were the subordinates of Class 7 magical beasts. Their deaths angered the Class 7 magical beasts, all giving out earth-shaking roars at the sky, echoing through the entire artifact space. It created a lot discussion among the competitors, terrifying them all. There were only an extremely low amount of people who managed to stay calm, people who had an extremely good understanding of the Saint artifact. Other than all this, Jianchen also encountered a few competitors. He directly sent them out of the artifact space without any mercy, allowing his points to reach over 80. Chapter 765, A Fight for a Monster Core. 5 days later, Jianchen arrived above a forest. The cloud he rode, condensed from radiant Saint force, slowly flew at a low altitude, as he expanded his presence to its absolute limit, enveloping a radius of 20 kilometers to search for the tracks of Class 6 magical beasts and the competitors. Jianchen flew just above the tips of the trees. He turned to the white tiger which laid on his shoulder and mumbled, "Now that the energy within Xiao Bai's begun to fluctuate unstably, he seems to have also reached the most crucial moment for breaking through Class 5 and reaching Class 6. I'll have to put the matter of collecting points aside first and help out Xiao Bai. It won't be too late for me to collect points afterwards. There's still 10 days, so plenty of time. Once Xiao Bai reaches Class 6, he'll be equal to human heaven Saint Masters. Also, as he's a winged tiger god, he'll definitely be much stronger than those other magical beasts. Even beasts of antiquity will pale in comparison. He'll also have some ability to protect itself. Unless it's saint rulers, probably no one can harm him." Roar. Just as Jianchen thought about this, loud roar suddenly reverberated from up ahead. The sound spread everywhere, echoing in the surroundings. Class 6 magical beast. Jianchen's eyes lit up and he looked ahead with a keen eyes. He mumbled to himself, "This should be a magical beast at the peak of Class 6. The vital energies in its blood is extremely rich, and its voice seems to be filled with anger and pain. There's probably people fighting it." Jianchen did not hesitate at all, immediately speeding in the direction where the sound originated from. In a dense forest 15 kilometers away from Jianchen, a dozen or so radiant Saint Masters were scattered in groups of 3, in a formation. Milky white light constantly flickered, turning into 1. 3-meter-long radiant Saint swords, shooting at the black, 6-meter-long panther. The Black Panther was already at the peak of Class 6, possessing an extremely great capacity for battle. However, it still struggled to counterattack when surrounded by a dozen or so radiant Saint Masters. Its body was already littered with wounds and covered in blood, while its black coat had already been dyed red. Roar! The Black Panther roared several times, while its vicious-looking eyes shone scarlet red. Not only did the panther's wounds hinder its ability for battle, but it made it become even more brutal. It became more and more courageous as it fought. With the constant swinging of its front paws, a powerful force shot towards the surrounding Radiant Saint Masters over and over again, while the panther constantly spat out balls of violent energy at the surroundings from its mouth. The surrounding Radiant Saint Masters actually handled the panther's attacks in an orderly fashion. In their groups of 3, 2 of them were responsible for receiving the panther's attacks, while the other person constantly condensed Radiant Saint swords to attack the panther. Their tacit teamwork was clearly the result of years of training. The wounds on the panther's body increased. Even though its body was extremely tough, it was unable to last much longer at all against the consecutive attacks of Radiant Saint swords. Roar! Suddenly, the panther roared at the sky. It paid a price of receiving 3 direct attacks to leap to a small group, opening its large, fierce-looking mouth to bite at a person without any hesitation. The Radiant Saint Masters was unable to react in time, and his entire upper body was bitten by the panther. In the moment of life and death, a huge pillar of light descended from the sky, disappearing with the Radiant Saint Master. It clearly was not the first time the panther had seen such a thing. It did not pay any attention to the huge pillar that had descended from the sky, immediately lunging at the second person without faltering. Its sharp claws viciously raked across the chest of the person. Crack! The Radiant Saint armor on the person seemed to be as weak as tofu, turning into smithereens from the panther's attack, causing the Radiant Saint Master's chest to be dyed in blood. Arg! The person cried out in pain, and he was knocked flying from the panther's attack. As he flew, he spat out a mouthful of blood, becoming sheet white. The panther paid no more attention to the person. It opened its bloody mouth, continuing with the 3rd Radiant Saint Master. Radiant Saint Sword. The person did not falter. The Radiant Saint sword that he had just condensed immediately became a streak of white light, shooting towards the panther's mouth with lightning speed. Bang! The Radiant Saint sword that had entered the panther's mouth exploded with a loud sound. A powerful ripple of energy leaked out from the panther's mouth, causing the panther to cry out in pain, while blood constantly flowed from its mouth. At the same time, the huge, bloody mouth bit onto the person's body, engulfing his entire upper body. In that crucial, another giant pillar of light descended from the ground, taking the 2nd Radiant Saint Master away from the space of the artifact. Quick, attack its wounds with all you have. A person in another direction immediately cried out. Shortly afterwards, the dozen or so Radiant Saint Masters all realized that it was a great opportunity to heavily injure the panther. All of them immediately began to condense Radiant Saint swords, shooting it at the deeper injuries of the panther, wanting to deal life-threatening damage to the panther by taking advantage of these injuries. Swish, 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 swish. A dozen or so Radiant Saint swords shot out from the Radiant Saint Masters at almost simultaneously, striking the wounds of the panther with extremely great accuracy. The wounds expanded immediately, causing bright red blood spurted out from its body. The panther gave off a miserable cry and glanced at the people, eyes filled with endless hatred. Afterwards, it shot into the distance with a leap, fleeing away. At this moment, a huge, 3-meter-long Radiant Saint sword shot from the sky, transforming into a streak of light with a frightening manner. It caught up to the fleeing panther, before finally firmly striking its wound, deepening it. The strike was extremely powerful, several times more powerful than the Radiant Saint swords from the other people. The huge panther was actually sent flying by the strike, landing heavily 3 meters away. A bone-deep wound appeared on its back, which even exposed some of its inner organs. Roar! The panther gave out a cry of pain. The injury dealt by attack was just too great. This magical beast can't last much longer. Everyone hurry up, we can't let it be taken by someone else. The Radiant Saint Masters who had surrounded the panther before called out and sprinted wildly towards the panther. Surging Radiant Saint force quickly gathered in their hands, forming Radiant Saint swords rapidly. With a swing, they flew towards the panther. The people wanted to kill the panther as soon as possible and obtain its monster core. As the many swords landed on the panther, it deepened the panther's injuries even more. It was no longer able to flee, now lying on the floor, roaring in pain. The life force of Class 6 magical beasts were just too tenacious. Even after taking of consecutive blows from over 10 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, the panther was still not dead. A streak of light quickly approached the area in the sky. It was a white-robed Radiant Saint Master on a cloud, and in his hand, 3 Radiant Saint swords were fully condensed. They quickly shot off side by side, striking the deep wound on the panther's neck with extremely great precision. Bang! 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 With the 3 violent sounds, the panther's meter-wide head was severed from its body, knocked directly into the sky by the powerful energy ripples. It had been beheaded, drizzling the area with blood. The Class 6 panther, a beast the dozen or so Radiant Saint Masters had spent an hour battling, died just like this, to Jian Chen, who had hurried over much later. Hurry up and go get the monster core. A Radiant Saint Master called out immediately, and several people ran towards the corpse at the same time, in attempt to extract the monster core as soon as possible. Meanwhile, another few Radiant Saint swords shot from the sky, this time targeting the Radiant Saint Masters who ran towards the panther's corpse. The expressions of the people all changed and they sneered. They all condensed a Radiant Saint sword each, where were shot towards the swords targeting their companions to block them, while the others shot towards Jian Chen. A 2-meter-wide Radiant Saint shield appeared in Jian Chen's hand, which he tossed out. It blocked the Radiant Saint swords flying towards him. Without faltering in speed, Jian Chen flew over the tops of the people, before landing firmly before the panther corpse. He immediately condensed a Radiant Saint sword, which he stabbed into the panther's body, removing its monster core. His movements were extremely smooth and extremely proficient. Seeing the monster core being removed, the expressions of the dozen or so people became extremely ugly. They all glared at Jian Chen with ill intent. "Sir, we were the ones who heavily injured this Class 6 magical beast after a great deal of effort before it was killed, so that monster core should belong to us. It seems rather unfair for Sir to now take the monster core," an old man said coldly with a dark complexion. He had already learnt that Jian Chen's strength was something else in the short clashing from before. Otherwise, why would he spend so much time talking to Jian Chen? He would have rushed him already with his advantage in numbers. "Sir, return the monster core to us, and we won't argue over what happened before. We'll go our own ways afterwards and mind our own businesses," another Radiant Saint Master said gruffly, while his gaze towards Jian Chen was rather fearful. Before, they were not able to stop the person at all even when they had all struck out. The person arrived before the panther corpse calm as ever in the end. That was strength they could not just offend so easily. Jian Chen grabbed a handful of grass from the ground and cleaned away the blood from the monster core, before looking up at the people. He said unenthusiastically, "Not only do I want this monster core, I also want the points you possess." Hearing that, all of the people's faces changed. A monstrous rage bloomed in their hearts. To them, Jian Chen was haughty and extremely arrogant, and his oppressing words were going a little too far. Not only did he take their spoils of battle, he even wanted the points they possessed. This definitely was an undisguised provocation. Even though they knew Jian Chen's strength was special, they did not believe that he could fend off over 10 people just by himself. Before, they were fearful of Jian Chen, only because they did not want to provoke an expert like him so easily. It did not mean they were scared of him. "Since you are so arrogant, show us how powerful you are and if you have the right to be arrogant." Chapter 766, The White Tiger's Breakthrough, 1. The dozen or so Radiant Saint Masters were angered by Jian Chen. They all began to condense Radiant Saint swords to fight Jian Chen, where over 10 swords shot from their hands, flying towards Jian Chen without any mercy. They were very confident that even though Jian Chen was very strong, he definitely was unable to do something as exaggerated as take on all of them all by himself. This was because they were not weak either, and also had an extremely good teamwork. Jian Chen condensed a 2-meter-wide Radiant Saint shield in his left hand in front of him, while coalesced 6 Radiant Saint swords with his right hand. The 6 swords split into 3 different groups and shot at 3 people where one sword lead and the other followed. The 3 leading swords directly shattered the people's Radiant Saint armor, while the 3 following swords collided with the no longer armored people. They directly pierced through their chests, appearing on the other side. Just as they faced the edge of death, 3 huge pillars of light descended from the sky, disappearing with them. At the same time, the Radiant Saint swords also collided with the shield in front of Jian Chen. With a great bang, Jian Chen's shield shattered, but the shards did not disappear. Instead, they formed streaks of light, shooting and surrounding 2 Radiant Saint Masters. The 2 people had never expected that after breaking, the shards of the Radiant Saint shield could still harm people. Caught off guard, the countless pieces of shrapnel shot into their bodies, with many of the shards smashing into their throats and hearts, 2 life-threatening points of their bodies. Another 2 huge pillars of light descended from the sky, sucking away the 2 people from the artifact space. In just a single clash, 5 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters were slaughtered by Jian Chen, causing the original group to only have 7 people remaining. The remaining people were all stunned. They stared at Jian Chen with pale faces, while dread flooded the depths of their eyes. Jian Chen's strength had completely exceeded their expectations. They had never thought, no matter what, that Jian Chen would kill 5 of their companions in such a short time. Even though everything had occurred right before their eyes, they still struggled to accept it or believe it. Perhaps he's Class 7. At this moment, similar thoughts appeared in the minds of the 7 remaining people. To them, only Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters could slaughter 5 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters so easily. At this very moment, another 7 Radiant Saint sword condensed before Jian Chen. The Radiant Saint force filled with extreme yang qi rippled with surging energy, not any weaker than a full power strike from a Heaven Saint Master. Run! The remaining people were overwhelmed with shock and all began to run. They no longer dared to stay behind to fight Jian Chen. Their hearts were filled with regret. If they had known that Jian Chen was so powerful earlier, how would they dare to ask Jian Chen for the Class 6 Monster Core? Jian Chen did not plan on letting them go. The swords shot out with a whistle, landing mercilessly on the backs of the 7 people. The Radiant Saint armor on the 7 of them all shattered, while the powerful force of the collision jolted through their bodies, heavily injuring their fragile bodies. The people could not help but vomit up a mouthful of blood as they also lost balance, collapsing onto the ground. Radiance burst. Jian Chen bellowed. Surging Radiant Saint force immediately condensed into bean-sized droplets, raining on the people. Now that the people had already lost their abilities to resist, they could only watch helplessly as the sky full of droplets bearing sharp intent fell on them. Their eyes were filled with despair towards placing within the top 10. The power of the artifact activated in time. Several huge pillars of light descended from the sky, sucking away all 7 of them, while Jian Chen's radiance burst collided with the soil. The violent energy within the droplets exploded, kicking soil into the air and permeating the air with dust. After being taken away by the artifact's energy, the Radiant Saint Masters all left behind a speck, or several thumb-sized specks of white light. These Radiant Saint Masters had clearly obtained the points from defeating a few other people before, as there was close to 30 specks of white light in total. Jian Chen used the ancient jade pendant to absorb the specks of light in the air, which increased his points to over 100. He was already a fifth of the way to a stable position within the top 10. Jian Chen did not fret over the points, because he knew that there were fights currently occurring all over the artifact. The amount of points he would obtain from competitors would be relatively fewer at the start, while close to the end, almost all the points would be gathered on the few remaining people. At that time, he would be able to easily obtain several dozen, or even hundreds of points from a Radiant Saint Master he casually met. Collecting the points left behind by the people, Jian Chen then walked over to the magical beast corpse. Immediately, a red gas floated from the blood of the panther, before finally being absorbed by the white tiger. The panther's strength was already at the peak of Class 6, so the vital energies in its blood was clearly much more powerful than regular Class 6 magical beasts. After absorbing the vital energies, the white light around the tiger became brighter and brighter, quickly enveloping it completely with extremely dazzling white light, surrounding the white tiger and partially hiding it. Very soon, the Class 6 panther's vital energies were completely absorbed by the white tiger. Jianshan turned to look at it on his shoulder. His eyebrows immediately became furrowed while he fell into a dilemma. The white tiger was currently too eye-catching. If he met other competitors, he would not be able to hide the white tiger's special characteristics. Once this broke out among the competitors, the characteristics would be learnt by the great clans very quickly, and hence draw a lot of attention. It would not expose the tiger's real identity, but it was better to be safe than sorry. If he really did meet somebody extremely knowledgeable and they recognized the tiger, it would undoubtedly be something extremely terrifying, an outcome Jianshan definitely did not wish to see. Jianshan pondered for a while, before immediately taking flight. He found a mountain range several dozen kilometers away, and carved out a cave in an extremely hidden area, before putting the white tiger in the cave. He planned to wait there for the white tiger to break through. Jianshan sat cross-legged 5 meters away from the white tiger, eyes closed and resting. He planned to stay there and accompany the white tiger as it broke through, to prevent anything unexpected from happening. 3 days passed just like this. In those 3 days, the light on the white tiger's body became brighter and brighter, but it still did not break through successfully. After waiting patiently for 3 days, Jianshan could not sit around for any longer. Standing up, he stared at the white tiger covered in white light. It did not seem like it would be able to successfully break through and reach Class 6 in half a month, and Jianshan just did not have this time to wait around in the Saint Artifact. No, I can't keep waiting like this. It's unsuitable to take the white tiger out of the Saint Artifact like this. Its appearance will definitely attract a lot of attention. Since the vital energies within the blood of Class 6 magical beasts can assist the white tiger in breaking through, I'll go hunt Class 6 magical beasts. Jianshan mumbled softly, before immediately leaving the cave. For the white tiger's safety, he could not conceal his strength as a fighter any longer, directly casting down a powerful barrier at the entrance, encasing the entire cave with his abilities as a saint ruler. With that, even if other people bored another hole, they would not be able to enter the encased area. After doing everything, Jianshan used tree branches to hide the entrance of the cave. Ensuring that the entrance to the cave had been completely concealed, he left the area, traveling off into the distance to hunt for Class 6 magical beasts. In the blink of an eye, another 2 days passed. 10 days had already passed inside the Saint Artifact, leaving 5 more days until the competition ended. In those 2 days, Jianshan abandoned the competition, devoting all his energy into finding Class 6 magical beasts to slaughter. Afterwards, he would directly throw the corpses into his space ring, to bring back for the white tiger to absorb the vital energies. Currently, the white tiger's breakthrough was the priority, so he placed the matter of getting into the top 10 to the side without any hesitation. In the 2 days, Jianshan killed a total of 10 Class 6 magical beasts, supplying a great amount of vital energy to the white tiger to break through. The white tiger was one more step closer to breaking through after absorbing all the vital energies. The white light around it had become completely tangible, forming a huge cocoon. Today, 8 white-robed radiant saint masters rode a cloud over a mountain range. Ignoring the leading female, the other 7 people were all men of different ages, and they all carried bulging bags. The bags were completely made from magical beast skin. Miss, it's already been 10 days. There's only 5 days left before the competition ends. In these remaining days, it'll be very likely for us to meet Yang Yutian. Do we listen to Elder Lu and avoid becoming enemies with him, or do we help out Yun Tian and take him on as an opponent, preventing him from placing within the top 10 when we meet him? Of the 8 radiant saint masters, a ruddy old man asked as he looked at the leading female. Chapter 767, The White Tiger's Breakthrough. 2. The woman in front was an alluring beauty. She was the first young lady of the Kara clan, the person ranked first among the 10 great Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, Kara Liwei. She seemed as though in thought as she used her right hand to gently play around with her slightly messy hair, which was blown about by the wind. She said with a soft voice, "Although I've never seen Yang Yutian, I've learned quite a lot about his deeds from Elder Lu. If we really do compare him with Yun Tian, I obviously will lean more towards him. But, I have no idea what type of person this Yang Yutian is, and whether he will achieve great things. As for Yun Tian, his conditions are tempting, but I don't trust him much at all. I'm not going to choose who to support until I see Yang Yutian myself." Miss is right. The Radiant Saint Master Union is a force to be reckoned with, while both Yang Yutian and Yun Tian may become the successor of the organization. However, the two of them have already turned on each other. Once one of them fails, they'll be utterly doomed. We shouldn't be careless right now. Once we leap to the wrong side, our Kara clan may become enemies of the Radiant Saint Master Union. A middle-aged man agreed with her. Although they had no need to meddle with the internal affairs of the Union, it was a great opportunity to pull the Union to their side at the same time. This was a chance that their Kara clan could not just give up so easily. As they spoke, the group flew over a mountain range. But at that very moment, a gleam of light flashed across Kara Liwei's eyes. She immediately stopped flying and glared downwards. The people behind her all stopped soon after. They too stared downwards in interest. They knew that once the first young lady of their clan displayed such an expression, she had discovered something. However, after looking for quite a long time but still unable to find anything out of place, they could not help but become doubtful. Immediately, someone could bear it any longer and asked, "Miss, have you discovered something?" Kara Liwei's expression slowly became stern. "I feel a weird energy down below. It seems to be the energy of barriers that only saint rulers can use." Hearing that, the 7 Radiant Saint Masters all piqued in interest. They did not find it weird that Kara Liwei could sense the energy of barriers, because they all knew very well that the young lady before them was special. Not only could she sense Radiant Saint Force, she could also sense the energy of other attributes as a Radiant Saint Master, and even more unbelievable, she became able to sense World Force only used by Saint Rulers after she had reached Class 6. The only shortcoming was that she could only feel the energies and World Force, and not control or manipulate it. The barrier energy cast down by Saint Rulers was transformed from World Force, so naturally, Kara Liwei was able to sense it clearly. "Wait here for a while, I'll go down and have a look." Kara Liwei descended from the air into the dense forest. Following the feeling in her heart, she discovered a cave covered up by branches in the end. Kara Liwei carefully looked around. Her eyes flowed with interest and she mumbled to herself, "These branches haven't dried yet, so they were clearly broken off not too long ago. And this cave, looking at the marks, it was only dug out a while ago. Just who did this?" Kara Liwei furrowed her eyebrows tightly. Shortly afterwards, she seemed to think of something and her expression changed slightly. She mumbled to herself, "There's a barrier around this newly carved cave. Perhaps there's saint rulers in the saint artifact?" Although she had reached such a conclusion, she did not feel any fear at all. It was not like she had never seen saint rulers, she had even come in contact with saint kings several times before. As a result, saint rulers trouble her at all. She stared at the pitch-black cave and hesitated for a while. Afterwards, she raised her slender arm, and a powerful radiant saint sword immediately condensed in her jade-white hand. With a wave, the sword transformed into a streak of white light, shooting into the cave. Bang! A powerful sound immediately resounded from the cave, while surging energy began to leak from the cave entrance. The 2-meter-tall entrance was increased by 1-fold in size, while the entire mountain shook slightly from the strike. The barrier was hidden within the cave, but Kara Liwei's strike on the barrier did not even shake it. At the same time, hundreds of kilometers away, the white-clothed Jian Chen had just slaughtered a Class 6 poison magic scorpion. Just as he wanted to place the beast corpse into his space ring, a gleam of light suddenly flashed across his eyes. He said with a deep voice, "Crap, the barrier's been attacked. Looks like where the white tiger is hiding has been exposed. I need to hurry back immediately." Jian Shen no longer remained as leisurely as before. With a wave of his hand, the huge corpse of the scorpion was placed clearly into the space ring, and then he hurried away at his greatest speed. Outside the cave, the commotion caused by Kara Liwei alerted the Radiant Saint Masters in the sky. They immediately descended and arrived beside Kara Liwei. They asked, "Miss, what's happened?" Kara Liwei remained silent. She stared fixedly at the barrier hidden deep within the cave, and she clasped her fist at the entrance. She said, "This one is from the Kara clan. I wonder which senior is cultivating in seclusion here." Kara Liwei did not intend on breaking the barrier with the strike before. She only intended on alerting the person inside. It seemed rather impolite. Kara Liwei did not have to worry about a single saint ruler at all. Also, with her status and identity within the Kara clan, she did not need to stoop so low when facing a saint ruler. Perhaps there really are saint rulers here? The other Radiant Saint Masters all stared at the cave, displaying shocked expressions. This was the first time they had heard that there were saint rulers within the saint artifact. The people waited outside the cave for a while, but they did not get any reply. "Miss, let's just leave. Perhaps this senior just doesn't want to see us. We don't need to be wasting time here." A long while later, a middle-aged man finally became impatient and suggested on the side. Hearing that, Kara Liwei thought quietly for a while, before sighing gently, "Then let's leave." With that, they turned around, ready to depart. However, at that very moment, a powerful presence suddenly appeared in the cave. The presence was filled with utmost prestige and power, like the descent of a paramount lord. It broke through the obstruction of the barrier, spreading outwards quickly, enveloping the entire mountain range very soon. The group of people came to a screeching stop. They all floated in the sky on white clouds, staring closely at the cave. No, although this presence is powerful, it's far from the power of saint rulers. There's a peculiarity here. An old man said with a deep voice as he stared at the cave. This presence is filled with prestige and power, and I also seem to vaguely feel a sliver of violence within it. Perhaps the person within it is a bloodthirsty person? A middle-aged man said with a dark complexion. No. Kara Liwei shook her head gently. She stared at the cave with a weird glint in her beautiful eyes and said slowly, "If I haven't guessed wrongly, this presence is actually from a magical beast." What? A magical beast? That had shocked all other 7 Radiant Saint Masters. However, after thinking it over carefully, they felt like it was indeed very logical. This magical beast isn't strong, so how can it cast a barrier to protect itself? Also, looking at it, it seems to be breaking through, and from class 5 to class 6. If it was class 7, the presence definitely would not be something we can cope with. An old man analyzed carefully, but he was filled with doubt. Let's just wait here and see. Kara Liwei remained calm, but the light in her eyes constantly flickered. Afterwards, they waited quietly outside in the air. They all wanted to see just what would happen. An hour later, a streak of white light suddenly flew over from the distance. To no surprise, it headed towards where Kara Liwei's group was. The arrival of the person immediately attracted the group's attention. A cold light flashed across many of their eyes and immediately, a person sneered, "That person dares to run around recklessly all by himself. He must be quite strong, and he probably has quite a few points on him. Huh, the young miss just happens to be lacking in some points. Why don't we take it all from that person? I just hope the amount he has won't disappoint us." An old man chuckled. The figure in the distance arrived in front of them very soon, stood 20 meters away. Only at that moment could Kara Liwei see the person's appearance. He was in his 20s, an extremely handsome young man. However, What shocked Kara Liwei was that the young man's handsome face was actually rather resolute. It was a type of resoluteness would only appear on fighters who had experienced the wind and the rain and countless life-threatening situations. But it was currently appeared on a radiant Saint Master, people who always lead comfortable lives. This amazed Kara Liwei greatly. Along with the man's cold gaze, Kara Liwei even had a wrong impression that the young man before her was a fighter and not a radiant Saint Master, someone who had been through thick and thin. However, what surprised Kara Liwei the most was that her own appearance had no effect on the young man. His cold gaze did not even pause on her face, only glancing past indifferently. Thinking back, if a person did not become infatuated when they saw her face, they would be fully flushed. Even when old Saint Ruler monsters saw her, a vague sliver of admiration would flash across their eyes. There was no one who was able to keep their calm after seeing her for the first time, or even exchange glances so coldly. To Kara Liwei, she felt that this man before her was clearly differently when compared to the other people. Brat, hand over your points obediently and then forfeit yourself if you want to avoid some pain. Behind Kara Liwei, a middle-aged man bellowed as he stared at Jian Chen coldly. Hearing that, a cold light flashed across Jian Chen's eyes. He raised his hand and a radiant saint sword immediately condensed. What great condensing speed! When the people witnessed what Jian Chen had done, they were all stunned. Even Kara Liwei's eyes constricted abruptly, her gaze towards Jian Chen already began to experience some minute changes. This was because Jian Chen's speed at condensing radiant saint force was just too quick, so fast that even she fell short by a little. Radiant Saint Armor. The Radiant Saint Masters of the Kara clan were battle-worn people, so they reacted very quickly. They immediately condensed Radiant Saint Armors to protect themselves at their greatest speed, as well as to prepare for battle. At the same time, the sword in Jian Chen's had shot towards the person who spoke. It directly dispersed the armor that had not completely condensed, before landing heavily on the person's chest. The Radiant Saint Master gave out a cry in pain, before a huge pillar of light descended from the sky, taking him away. He was sent out of the competition. Chapter 768, The Kara Clan. What Jian Chen did angered the Radiant Saint Masters of the Kara clan immediately. Other than Kara Liwei, the other Radiant Saint Masters began condensing Radiant Saint swords. The 6 swords shot towards Jian Chen at the same time. Jian Chen's gaze was cold. He raised his left hand slightly and the surrounding Radiant Saint force immediately began to gather quickly. In a short blink of an eye, it formed a huge shield before him and another 3 Radiant Saint swords had already gathered around Jian Chen's right hand at the same time. Boom! When the 6 swords from the Kara clan people collided with Jian Chen's shield, it immediately gave off a powerful sound. The 6 Radiant Saint Masters were not weak, far stronger than those that Jian Chen had met before. Jian Chen's shield broke loudly only after blocking 3 swords, and the 3 other swords continued towards him without faltering in power. Jian Chen remained calm and unperturbed. With a slight wave of his right hand, the 3 swords before him immediately shot out with lightning speed, colliding with the 3 incoming Radiant Saint swords head-on with a loud sound. Jian Chen's Radiant Saint swords were clearly more powerful than the ones from the opposing people. His opponent's swords immediately shattered and the 6 swords collided mid-air, while Jian Chen's swords continued towards the 3 people. However, they were weakened by the collision, clearly much less powerful than before. Swish! 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 The 3 swords transformed into streaks of white light, directly colliding with the 3 people's chest with lightning speed. In that very moment, it cracked their Radiant Saint armor, while their fragile bodies were affected by the powerful collision, jolting their bodies. A mouthful of blood sprayed from their mouths, and their faces paled immediately. The people from the Kara clan all revealed shocked expressions, staring at Jian Chen in disbelief. Jian Chen's strength stunned them, but what truly overwhelmed them was that they had never even heard of such a powerful Radiant Saint Master. This was the true reason for their disbelief. The Kara clan had collected information on almost all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. Although it was impossible for them to know every Class 6 Radiant Saint Master, it allowed them to pay close attention to a few powerful Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters at the very least. Kara Liwei's expression became unprecedentedly stern. The young man's strength also shocked her very greatly, because even she, ranked first among the top 10 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, had no confidence in winning against the young man before her. Jian Chen's movements did not stop at all because of their shock. With a thought, another few powerful Radiant Saint swords condensed before him. He could already feel the changes to the White Tiger. He needed to slaughter the people before him as soon as possible, and then go into the cave to check on the White Tiger's situation. Yang Yutian, stop. We are people of the Kara clan and we do not wish to become enemies with you. At this moment, Kara Liwei suddenly called out with a high-pitched voice. She had never seen Jian Chen, but she could at least guess Jian Chen's identity. What? Yang Yutian. He's Yang Yutian. What Kara Liwei had called out caused all the other people of the Kara clan to be astounded. However, they soon realized that it was not surprising. There was only one Radiant Saint Master who possessed such unbelievable strength, where not only did they fail to deal with him with so many people working together, 3 of them were injured. It could only be the 3rd disciple of the Radiant Saint Master Union President, the person who knew the forbidden arts and killed over 30 Heaven Saint Masters all by himself, Yang Yutian. After learning the young man's identity, their gazes towards Jian Chen changed immediately. The anger within disappeared, because they all understood that the young man before them had an extremely great chance at becoming the next president of the Union. He was a person that they could not offend no matter what. Jian Chen's had paused slightly and stared at Kara Liwei with some surprise. He was not affected by Kara Liwei's alluring looks, remaining just as cold as before. He asked, "Are you people of the Kara clan?" Kara Liwei used her limpid eyes to look at Jian Chen with a complicated gaze. She too did not think that she would meet Yang Yutian in such a way. Also, from what happened before, Kara Liwei had personally witnessed Yang Yutian's coldness and ruthless resoluteness, as well as his powerful strength. This allowed Kara Liwei to finally grasp some understanding of what type of person Yang Yutian was. Although he was only 24 this year, Kara Liwei understood that Yang Yutian was vastly different from regular Radiant Saint Masters from what happened before. He could not be underestimated at all, and could not be judged according to his age. Correct, we are indeed people from the Kara clan. Yang Yutian, my Kara clan has no intentions of becoming enemies with you. What happened before was a misunderstanding. Kara Liwei looked at Jian Chen and said softly. In the very moment she saw Yang Yutian, she immediately forewent her preparations to work with Yun Tian. This was because Kara Liwei understood that Yang Yutian could not be offended no matter what, and if he was offended, the outcome would be much worse than offending Yun Tian. Also, Yang Yutian greatly exceeded Yun Tian in both talent and strength. She had even felt a sliver of the presence of slaughter from Yang Yutian, something Yun Tian definitely did not have. Jian Chen stayed silent for a while, before slowly dispersing his Radiant Saint swords. He said expressionlessly, "Go, leave here immediately." The Kara clan was one of the 3 great clans of the Holy Empire, and controlled a third of the empire's fate. At the same time, they were as powerful as an ancient clan, which also made Jian Chen quite fearful. He did not want to purposely provoke the clan over some small matters. Most importantly, the Qinhuang Kingdom was a subsidiary of the Kara clan. If he did fall out with the clan, even the Qinhuang Kingdom would be affected when his identity was exposed. Seeing how Jian Chen did not wish to pursue the matter, the people of the Kara clan immediately relaxed slightly. This was because if their relationship with Jian Chen took for a bad turn, it could greatly affect the clan. This was something they did not wish to see. One of their people was sent out of the competition from the conflict before, but it was not life-threatening, so it was not too big of a problem. Currently, the presence from the White Tiger was no longer blocked by the barrier cast down by Jian Chen. Inside the cave, it became more and more powerful, enveloping a radius of several dozen kilometers. It was also constantly increasing. The people of the Kara clan did not leave immediately. Kara Liwei glanced at the cave not too far away, and asked Jian Chen, Yang Yutian, do you know what's happening inside the cave? Hearing that, Jian Chen furrowed his eyebrows, before looking at the people rather impatiently. He said coldly, leave here immediately, or I can only offend you. Before the people had left, Jian Chen could not enter the cave no matter what, because the barrier inside was just too difficult to explain. Also, he could not allow for any part of the white tiger's identity to leak out. Jian Chen's rudeness caused the people's expressions to change slightly. Kara Liwei was affected in particular. As the special first young lady of the clan, she was never spoken to in such a way. Yang Yutian, it's us who first discovered this cave. Are we not even allowed to stay and have a look inside? Kara Liwei said rather unhappily. Unconcealed anger welled in her alluring face. If it was another Radiant Saint Master who spoke to her like that, she would definitely not have held back, but thinking of how terrifying and how strong Jian Chen was, as well as the fact that it was extremely possible that he could become the future president of the Union, Kara Liwei could only control herself. The presence within the cave increased constantly, while Jian Chen could clearly feel that the energy inside was becoming more and more unstable. It made Jian Chen rather anxious. People of the Kara clan, since you're unwilling to leave, I can only move against you all. Jian Chen called out coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding Radiant Saint force rushed wildly towards Jian Chen. With a finger pointing at the sky, he bellowed, Judgment Sword. In order to avoid wasting any time, Jian Chen could not care any more, even if it meant offending the Kara clan. Judgment Sword, one of the three great arts. Yang Yutian, you, Kara Liwei's expression immediately changed greatly. She had never thought Yang Yutian would actually move against them, much less use one of the three great radiant arts immediately, as if he bared a huge grudge towards the Kara clan or something. Kara Liwei was clearly angered very much. In her opinion, Yang Yutian was rude and unreasonable. As the first young lady of the Kara clan, he possessed a great status, yet she had already spoken to him in such a humble manner. However, he did not appreciate it, and instead wanted to start fighting just because she said displeasing. Kara Liwei gritted her teeth and glared viciously at Jian Chen with her beautiful eyes. She felt like her chest was about to burst from anger, but seeing the sword quickly condensing above Jian Chen, her complexion then became ugly. The whole situation had already developed to a point where she knew they would really have to clash with Yang Yutian if her group stayed for any longer. Yang Yutian, stop right now. We'll leave immediately. Kara Liwei's beautiful face had already become ghastly pale from anger. After signaling all the people, she left immediately, disappearing into the distance. With their departure, the sword above Jian Chen also slowly dispersed. Unless he had to, he did not want to offend the Kara clan so easily. He was fearful of the clan, and he worried for the Qinhuang kingdom. After watching Kara Liwei's group depart, Jian Chen entered the cave in a flash, passing through the barrier without any obstruction. Kara Liwei's group stopped 25 kilometers away. Currently, all their complexions were ghastly, all sheet white from resentment. This Yang Yutian has gone too far. He actually treat us like this. Does he want to become enemies with our Kara clan? A middle-aged man said angrily. This Yang Yutian is just too arrogant and harsh. Just because he has impressive talent and is very likely to become the next president, does he intend on looking down on our Kara clan? Humph. A ruddy old man was also quite angry, speaking with a resentful tone. It'll clearly be extremely difficult to work with this Yang Yutian since he's so arrogant and unreasonable. Miss, what do you think we should do? Another middle-aged man asked. Chapter 769, Trembling of the Saint Artifact. Kara Liwei sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed down. What happened before slowly flashed through her head, from when Jian Chen hurried over from the distance to everything that had occurred when he had arrived. She slowly discovered something rather strange. Have you realized that when Yang Yutian first appeared, he traveled directly for the cave, and did not hurry over because we were there, as if the mysterious cave was his target instead of us. Also, in the end, he wanted us to leave immediately, perhaps to get us to leave the cave. If we did not leave, he was even ready to chase us, members of the Kara clan, away as enemies. It's obvious that he discovered something important in the cave and he doesn't want us to know. Kara Liwei was a clever and quick-witted person. Now that she was calm, she thought of the crucial points very quickly. Hearing that, a gleam of light immediately flashed across the eyes of the 6 other Radiant Saint Masters, as if they too had reached an understanding. A person spoke out immediately, with Miss putting it like that, I feel that it's just as you've described. Yang Yutian only wanted us to leave the cave. Perhaps there's some secret hidden within the cave? From the presence, I already felt that it was a Class 5 magical beast making a breakthrough. Also, there's rumors outside that Yang Yutian has an extremely cute, snow-white beast cub that he brings everywhere. Perhaps the Class 5 magical beast making a breakthrough is that beast cub Yang Yutian carries around? A middle-aged man asked in thought. If the magical beast is indeed the beast cub that accompanies Yang Yutian, why was he so hurried? Even if the cub holds great importance to him, he doesn't need to risk offending the Kara clan by chasing us away. You're right. And what was that barrier in the cave about? The group from the Kara clan began analyzing it through discussion. However, the result of the discussion slowly formed. Instead of answering their questions, it instead made them even more doubtful. Kara Liwei stood silently to one side, while light flickered in her eyes. She also seemed to be thinking about those questions. A while later, she began speaking unhurriedly. No matter what, this Yang Yutian definitely has some things he doesn't want us to see. Also, I've examined that cave. It was cut open recently. It's extremely possible that he created the cave. As for the barrier, perhaps a saint ruler left a sliver of barrier energy in Yang Yutian's body, allowing him to be able to cast down a barrier? In Kara Liwei's mind, she could not help but think of Jian Chen's handsome and resolute face, Jian Chen's cold gaze, as well as his ability to be able to kill without hesitation and attack viciously. These expressions and manners would only appear on fighters who had weathered the wind and rain, spending many years traveling around the continent, people who had their hands dyed with blood. It rarely ever appeared on a Radiant Saint Master, much less a 24-year-old Radiant Saint Master. These various factors even would make Kara Liwei doubt sometimes whether Yang Yutian was a Radiant Saint Master or not. Just what type of person is this Yang Yutian? Why, I do feel that he's unlike a Radiant Saint Master, and more similar to a fighter. Kara Liwei was filled with curiosity. These were all changes that occurred to Jian Chen without him knowing after he arrived in the artifact space. With all the killing and slaughtering, it was as if Jian Chen had returned to his days of roaming the continent, silently changing Jian Chen's temperament. It activated his nature hidden deep within without any sound, which was why Jian Chen had caused Kara Liwei to feel this way. Let's not offend Yang Yutian. I feel like this Yang Yutian isn't as simple as he seems, Kara Liwei said gently, before slowly traveling into the distance. Inside the cave, the white tiger was currently encased in a 3-meter-wide cocoon. The white cocoon glowed with dazzling light, scattering over the entire cave. Within it, a much more powerful energy fluctuated in an extremely unstable manner. Jian Chen sat cross-legged 5 meters away, staring fixedly at the huge, white cocoon. He had thrown the Class 6 magical beast he had killed beside the cocoon, where strands of red gas floated from the blood, absorbed into the huge white cocoon. After absorbing the vital energies from the blood, the energy within the white cocoon became even more violent. At the same time, the presence it gave off became even stronger, extending from the initial dozen of kilometers to hundreds. Just how much more time does the white tiger need to break through? A sliver of concern appeared on Jian Chen's face. He could feel that the energy within the cocoon was currently changing in quality. The vital energies in the blood of magical beasts was nourishment that could allow the white tiger to convert the energy faster, but the quantity of vital energies required was just too much. Jian Chen just did not have the time to hunt enough Class 6 magical beasts it would require. But without the vital energies, the amount of time the white tiger needed for the breakthrough would not change. Jianshen just did not have the time to remain in the saint artifact and wait for the white tiger to break through. The blood of magical beasts can decrease Xiao Bai's breakthrough time, and the blood from my chaotic body is clearly much more powerful than the blood of magical beasts. If I use my own blood, perhaps the effect will be much stronger than magical beast blood? Jianshen mumbled to himself, before a determined light appeared in his eyes. Immediately, a strand of Azulet's sword chi appeared on his finger. With a swing of his hand, it cut towards his wrist. However, just as the sword chi struck Jianshen's wrist, it left behind a faint, white mark. The Azulet sword chi was unable to break through Jianshen's chaotic body. Jianshen stared blankly for a little, before immediately gathering the chaotic force within his body into his Dantian's chaotic Niden. It lowered his defense to as low as he could drop it. Then, he used the origin energy of the sword spirits to cut at his wrist again. This time, the wrist was indeed cut open, but it was only a wound less than an inch long. Before blood could even float out, the wound actually healed itself. This bloody chaotic body. Jianshen could not help himself and swore aloud. Only now did he discover that having an overly tough body was not necessarily good. With a flip of his hand, he directly removed the ruler armament taken away from the great elders of the Hongfu clan from his space ring, the dragon-slaying sword. Surging saint force immediately poured into the sword, which caused the sword's dark light to glow brightly. Afterwards, he swung it viciously towards his left wrist. Immediately, a deep wound formed on the wrist, where bright red blood immediately began to spurt out. Immediately, Jianshen placed his hand on the white cocoon around the tiger, offering up the blood from the wrist for the white tiger to absorb. Jianshen's blood disappeared into the cocoon as soon as it landed on it. With that, the energy in the cocoon also became even more powerful. Jianshen could clearly feel that after absorbing his blood, the energy in the white tiger began to be converted at an extremely fast rate, while also increasing in power. The blood from my chaotic body should be extremely helpful to the tiger, Jianshen thought. Meanwhile, the blood at his wrist flowed without any signs of stopping, all being absorbed by the white tiger. However, chaotic body's recovery rate was just too great. In just 3 seconds, the wound on Jianshen's wrist healed, returning to how it was before. With nothing else to do, Jianshen used the ruler armament to cut his wrist once again, using his own blood as nourishment as a way to increase the white tiger's breakthrough speed. As Jianshen's blood was absorbed by the tiger's presence became more and more powerful. The vast presence was hegemonic, as if a ruler was slowly waking from his sleep, while the radius covered by the presence exceeded the hundreds, reaching into several thousand kilometers, alerting many competitors. All the magical beasts in the area covered also seemed to be greatly frightened, including Class 6 magical beasts. All of them lay on the ground, trembling, while their eyes were filled with horror, as if they had been greatly terrified. 50 kilometers away, Kara Liwei's group all stopped, each looking in the direction of the presence in shock. A Class 5 magical beast making a breakthrough can actually give off such a vast presence, and this presence seems to be filled with dominance. This is definitely a king beast from a powerful background. An old man said with a deep voice, while he displayed an unconcealed expression of envy. Perhaps the beast cub accompanying Jianshen is a beast of antiquity. Kara Liwei's eyes flickered with a light as she muttered with a soft voice. Thousands of kilometers away, over 20 Radiant Saint Masters were currently battling 3 Class 6 magical beasts in a group. Suddenly, a vast presence appeared from the distance, enveloping the whole region. With its sudden arrival, the 3 magical beasts shook violently, their eyes immediately filling with extreme levels of terror. They seemed to be greatly terrified, and with a mournful cry, they no longer wanted to battle, fleeing the area with their greatest speed. The Radiant Saint Masters did not pursue the beasts. Instead, they all looked towards the origin of the presence, while their gazes were filled with surprise. This should be the presence from a magical beast. I can clearly feel that the presence is filled with absolute hegemony. Looks like this beast's background is definitely something else, at least a king beast. An old man said with a deep voice. He was the leading Radiant Saint Master from the Tsar family, Tsar Telos. This presence isn't too powerful, it should only be a magical beast breaking through to Class 6, but it's enough to scare away the 3 Class 6 magical beasts, as well as cause fear in the beasts. This cannot be achieved by a simple king beast. I'd say it's a beast of antiquity that's just broken through. An elegant middle-aged man said. He was Yun Tian, the second disciple of the Radiant Saint Master Union president. A beast of antiquity? Who would have thought that we'd find a beast of antiquity here? Tsar Telos mumbled. He was excited, with burning greed in his eyes. This beast of antiquity's only just broken through. It shouldn't be too strong. Elder Tsar Telos, if we take this beast back and offer it up to the ancestor will definitely be extremely happy, a Radiant Saint Master of the Tsar family said excitedly. Tsar Telos's eyes immediately began to glow. He laughed aloud, ha ha ha, correct. If we bring this beast back and offer it up to the ancestor, it'll be a great deed. Let's go and capture that beast for the clan. At the same time, there was a sealed forest in a remote region within the artifact space. In the center of the forest stood a lone wooden hut, which was covered with marks left behind by time. Inside the hut, a bare-chested, middle-aged man sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. Suddenly the man snapped his eyes, and 2 lightning bolts that seemed tangible shot out. It pierced 2 holes in the hut. What is this presence, actually making me shudder with fear? The man stood up, while his gaze was filled with shock. Afterwards, his body disappeared from the hut without a sound, appearing once again at the edge of the small forest. Before him, a powerful energy separated the surrounding space and formed a barrier, blocking the man's steps. The man stood before the seal, staring fixedly at the empty space in the distance with a light of great shock in his eyes. His eyebrows were furrowed deeply, while he revealed an expression of thought. Suddenly, the middle-aged man seemed to find something in his ancient inherited memories. His expression immediately changed greatly and he cried out without any control, "The winged tiger god, it's the presence of the winged tiger god." Chapter 770, Yang Yutian's Strength, 1. At the same time, in an unknown region within the artifact space, there was a sword-shaped mountain peak sealed up by the Saint Artifact's energy. A middle-aged man in beast skins currently laid on the very peak of the mountain, staring blankly at the white, misty sky with dull eyes. A while later, the man's eyes slowly became more lively. He gave out a loud sigh and cursed angrily, "Bloody artifact spirit, you've actually trapped me here again." Humph, that abominable Radiant Saint Master Union actually sends a group of ant-like Radiant Saint Masters here for trials every 50 years, forcing me to be chained up by that bloody artifact spirit. This is just preposterous. Why must I, an actual Class 8 magical beast, be trapped here like I'm in prison? This is a huge humiliation. The man clenched his fists tightly and said with gritted teeth, "Too bad the artifact spirit's too strong. Even though I'm a Class 8 beast of antiquity, I'm not that bloody artifact spirit's opponent. In this space, I don't even have the ability to counterattack. Humph, wait till I reach Class 9, I'll definitely break out of this space. And that goddamn artifact spirit, trapping me for so long, I'll definitely teach him a solid lesson and vent my anger." Speaking up to there, the man seemed to remember something. His expression became gloomy and he muttered, "It's a pity that it's absolutely impossible to break through to Class 9 in this space. Do I have to stay trapped in this bloody space until I die?" AI. The middle-aged man gave out a long sigh, while his expression was filled with helplessness. Just at this moment, the middle-aged man's face suddenly froze, while his eyes shone with a dumbstruck light. What is this presence?" The man's face was filled with shock. He had already stood up from the ground. Standing on the peak of the mountain, he stared at the horizon far away, while his expression fluctuated between shock and doubt. Just what is this presence? It actually makes the depths of my soul tremble. No, this is impossible. There cannot be any presence within the artifact space that can make me tremble, not even that powerful artifact spirit. And this presence is clearly so weak. The man was absolutely astounded, but even after a lot of thought, he could not reach a conclusion. He just did not understand why such a weak presence would cause the depths of his soul to shake. Suddenly, an ancient piece of inherited memory slowly appeared in the man's head. It immediately turned the man sheet white, completely overwhelming him with disbelief. It's the ancient beast god, the winged tiger god. It's the presence of the winged tiger god. The man cried out involuntarily, completely astounded. My inherited memories clearly record some information of the winged tiger god. This winged tiger god is the god of the beast race, a paramount existence that once surpassed Saint Emperor. Even the war god Ergens of the ancient 100 races fell to its hands. And I'm actually sensing its presence in the saint artifact right now. Oh, how is that possible? How did a winged tiger god appear here? All the powerful magical beasts sealed up within the saint artifact sensed the presence from the winged tiger god as the tiger's presence pervaded the region, each changing greatly in expression. They all began guessing at what it was. Other than the powerful magical beasts, even the competitors hunting beasts felt it. Between them, there were plenty of people with broad knowledge, immediately recognizing that the presence was from a beast of antiquity in its breakthrough. They all traveled towards the origin of the presence with various different thoughts and feelings. The disturbance from the white tiger's sudden breakthrough was extremely great. Not only did it alert the powerful sealed-up magical beasts, even all the competitors were attracted towards it. From all directions, large numbers of white-robed radiant saint masters flew towards where the tiger was. They had temporarily abandoned all battles under the temptation of a beast of antiquity. Very soon, a few radiant saint masters arrived outside the cave Jian Chen had carved open. This presence originates from inside. The magical beast should be inside the cave. A radiant saint master remarked as he pointed at the dark cave. The beasts only just started breaking through, and it seems to be amidst its breakthrough. It should be at its weakest. Everyone rush in and tame that beast. Once we tame a beast of antiquity, our strength will increase greatly. A radiant saint master called out in the crowd of people, attempting to push some people into the cave to see what was going on inside. However, what he said had no effect at all. The Class 6 radiant saint masters present were all people of great age, so how could they be tricked so easily? None of them dared to charge in brashly before understanding the situation within the cave. Who knew, perhaps unknown dangers awaited right in front of them. Also, the Class 5 magical beasts were beasts that had essentially reached adulthood. How could they be so easily tamed? The presence from the cave constantly grew stronger. Going from Class 5 to Class 6 was a qualitative leap for the white tiger. The energy in its body was currently being converted at great speeds to Class 6, but as it was a winged tiger god, breaking through was much more difficult than normal magical beasts. But once it did succeed, its strength would take a similar qualitative leap, reaching something beyond regular magical beasts and those beasts of antiquity. Currently, Jian Chen continued to use his blood to speed up the white tiger's breakthrough. He knew exactly what was going on outside, but he did not have the power to prevent it. His face also began to turn sheet white from the loss of blood. Very soon, another 2 hours passed. The number of radiant saint masters gathered outside had already reached into the triple digits. They all stared at the cave and discussed about it, but no one was willing to go in and scout it out. At this moment, another group of over 20 people flew over from the distance with a great commotion. They directly flew over the people's heads, arriving 30 meters away from the cave. It's people of the Tsar family, they're people of the Tsar family. The people of the Tsar family have also come, and their numbers are quite plenty. Looks like the beast of antiquity is probably going to end up with the Tsar family, whatever, since the Tsar family is also participating, let's give up on it. This Tsar family must never be offended. The arrival of the group immediately caused quite a large hubbub among the crowd below, and a small portion of people immediately squashed out the sliver of greed within them. Although the Tsar family was only one of the 3 great clans of the Holy Empire, they were the most powerful clan among the 3. They were even capable of staving off the other 2 clans just by itself. The family was so powerful that even ancient clans did not dare to provoke them for certain things. The old man at the very front seems to be Tsar Telos. He's researched radiant arts for several centuries and has already reached a great level of proficiency with its use. He's extremely strong, as well as ranked 4th among the 10 great class 6 radiant saint masters. That person beside Tsar Telos seems to be the second disciple of the Radiant Saint Master Union, Yun Tian. He's ranked 5th among the top 10. At this very moment, another dozen or so Radiant Saint Masters flew over from the distance in a group. Their arrival immediately raised the attention of many people. It's the Khazda clan of the Empire's 3 great clans. They must have come for the magical beast breaking through in the cave as well. Now that 2 of the 3 great clans have come, only the Kara clan isn't here. The Kara clan should come very soon. I heard that the first young lady of the Kara clan, Kara Liwei, is first among the 10 great Radiant Saint Masters. She's already reached the very peak of Class 6, and is known as the strongest below Class 7. In the blink of an eye, the originally desolate mountain range became bustling with noise and activity with the arrival of people. There were at least 500 Radiant Saint Masters that had gathered outside the cave. Not only did all the famous people of the Holy Empire come, even 2 of the 3 great clans came. People of the Tsar family and the Kara clan stood at the very front, closest to the cave. As soon as the 2 groups saw each other, they glared at one another, as if they were water and fire, groups that would clash as soon as a disagreement occurred. The leading elder, Tsar Telos, of the Tsar family eyed the people from the Khazda clan coldly. He sneered, "Khazda, perhaps you want to steal the beast of antiquity from our Tsar family?" The person who led the Khazda clan group was also a ruddy old man. Hearing Tsar Telos' words, the old man, Khazda, also replied with a sneer, "This beast of antiquities already reached Class 6, so how can it be so easily tamed?" Tsar Telos, it's not that I look down on you lot, but even if your whole group goes in, you won't be able to seize a beast of antiquity that's reached Class 6, and even if you do succeed, it definitely won't yield to your Tsar family with its pride. Tsar Telos snorted coldly, "Whether we can take and tame the beast is the Tsar family's problem. It's not something you members of the Khazda clan can decide." Khazda laughed coldly, "Since you put it like that, let's all personally see if your Tsar clan can take this beast of antiquity. If you can't even seize it, taming it would be an absolute joke." Tsar Telos harumphed coldly, before no longer paying any more attention to Khazda. He stared fixedly at the cave before him, while a rare sliver of sternness appeared on his face. "Tsar Siluo, Tsar Ck, Tsar Yunhai, you 3 go in and have a look at what's going on inside." They had no idea what was going on inside the cave. Although Tsar Telos was confident in his strength, he did not dare to act too unbridledly within the artifact space. "Yes, Elder." 3 middle-aged men immediately replied with soft voices from behind Tsar Telos. They then condensed radiant saint armor to protect their bodies, carefully approaching the cave. They were protected by the artifact's energy in this space. They had no idea of the potential dangers ahead, but they felt no fear at all, because they knew that once their lives were truly threatened, they would just be expelled from the competition at most. All the people there immediately focused their attention on the 3 as they approached the cave carefully. The people all held their breaths, staring without even blinking, while many people had already donned radiant saint armors just in case something sudden occurred. Chapter 771, Yang Yutian's Strength, 2. Just as the 3 of them approached the entrance of the cave, 3 streaks of white light suddenly shot out and arrived before them in a flash. It was extremely fast. The 3 people who had gone ahead to scout out the cave changed greatly in expression. They had been extremely careful and cautious, but they struggled to dodge the 3 streaks of white light. They were struck in the chest. Thump. 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 The three of them were immediately thrown backwards by the powerful force with three muffled sounds. Their radiant saint armor were already covered with cracks at the chest region. Although the armor had blocked the entire attack for them, the powerful collision was still not something their bodies could resist. They struggled to suppress the spurt of blood from their mouths as they flew backwards, turning sheet white. Radiant Saint swords, those are Radiant Saint swords. There's Radiant Saint Masters in the cave. Immediately, many people in the crowd cried out in surprise. The three streaks of light traveled extremely quickly, but the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters still sensed the dense Radiant Saint force. Zartilos' complexion immediately darkened. He said with a deep voice, "Who'd think that there's someone a step ahead, already inside the cave?" Those three swords were extremely well condensed, and were pretty powerful. There are few with such strength among all the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. He's definitely someone well known. Judging from that strike, he should at least be within the top 10 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. Yun Tian remarked from beside Zartilos while his eyes flickered with an uncertain light. He heavily injured 3 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters and destroyed their Radiant Saint armor with just 3 Radiant Saint swords. Even I cannot display such strength with a single strike. The person inside is definitely stronger than me, Zartilos said with a deep voice. His complexion was very unpleasant. Hearing that, Yun Tian's heart jerked. He remembered something. Only the Kara clan isn't here among the 3 great clans, while Kara Liwei is placed first among the top 10. Perhaps it's them? Thinking up to there, Yun Tian spoke in the direction of the cave. I wonder which brother is in the cave. It would be nice if I could see you. There was no reply at all for a long time after Yun Tian had said that, which he took as rather offensive. His complexion darkened and he said coldly, "Since brother doesn't want to come out, I can only go in myself." Yun Tian did not approach the cave. Instead, he condensed a Radiant Saint sword and shot it at the cave. Bang! With a loud noise, the cave was opened up by quite a lot from the strike. In the very depths of the cave, a 2-meter-wide Radiant Saint shield slowly disappeared. Jian Chen slowly pulled back his still-bleeding hand. While the dragon-slaying sword in his right hand had disappeared, he had already stored it away in his space ring. Afterwards, he slowly walked towards the outside with an overcast expression. The barrier guarding the cave had already been removed by Jian Chen. There were already too many people that had gathered outside, and he did not want too many people to know about his secret of being able to cast down barriers. Otherwise, even if his Saint Ruler identity remained unexposed, it would still raise some unneeded problems and thoughts. The time it took for the white tiger to break through decreased dramatically after absorbing Jian Chen's blood. He could feel that it had reached its final stages to breaking through, so with just another few hours, it would reach Class 6. But before any breakthroughs were happening, he needed to devote all his strength to stop the people outside to prevent any dangers to the tiger. Outside the cave, Zartilos could feel the ever-increasing presence, yet his expression instead became more and more stern. He said gruffly, "That beast of antiquity is almost done with breaking through. After it succeeds, it'll become much more harder to tame it. We can't wait any longer. Everyone come with me, let's rush in." As soon as Zartilos finished speaking, he led the Zar family group, ready to charge in forcefully. "Those who enter the cave will die." At that very moment, an icy cold voice reverberated from the cave. The voice was extremely powerful, actually aching the eardrums of all Radiant Saint Masters present. With that, a white-robed young man who seemed to be in his 20s appeared before everyone at the cave entrance. Seeing the young man, the Zar family people's pupil constricted abruptly. Even Yun Tian's complexion changed slightly. "Yang Yutian, it's you." Zartilos stared at Jian Chen with a cold gaze while his tone was gruff. Accompanying it was a powerful killing intent. "Junior Yang Yutian, I never thought it'd actually be you." Yun Tian stared at Jian Chen with some surprise, before sneering soon after. "Yang Yutian, is he the rumored Yang Yutian?" The people in the Zar family group all observed Jian Chen curiously. The name, Yang Yutian, was like thunder to their ears after they had come to the city of God, but this was their first time seeing Yang Yutian. Yang Yutian, is he Yang Yutian? I heard he's already reached class 6 despite being just 24 this year. This Yang Yutian is an unprecedented genius. I heard that he's the most outstanding prodigy in all of history on the Tianyuan continent, that not only did he reach class 6 when he was 24, his grasp for radiant arts has also reached an extremely high level. This Yang Yutian killed over 30 Heaven Saint Masters all by himself on Fragrance River, and then survived the attack from a saint ruler. His strength far exceeds Kara Liwei. I heard Yang Yutian is the reincarnation of that Class 8 Radiant Saint Master from the ancient times. He'll definitely reach Class 8 in the future. As the name spread through the people present, it immediately caused a commotion, where the crowd buzzed with discussions. Zartilos stared indifferently at Jian Chen and said with a deep voice, Yang Yutian, is that beast of antiquity currently making a breakthrough yours? Jian Chen looked at Zartilos. Although he had never seen him, he was familiar with the 8 clans standing behind him. As a result, he knew very well that the person speaking was definitely from the Zar family from how they stood, and that his status was not low in the family. The matter of being targeted by the 2 great assassination organizations in the City of God quickly flashed through Jian Chen's mind. It led to a sliver of coldness in his eyes, which he then said icily, correct, the magical beast indeed belongs to me. Everyone, please stay a certain distance away to not interrupt the breakthrough. Otherwise, you are my enemy. The surrounding people hesitated slightly. A portion of them immediately retreated to a certain distance, clearly unwilling to provoke Yang Yutian. Kazdada, the person in charge of the Kazda clan, hesitated slightly, before clasping his hands at Jian Chen. Since Brother Yang Yutian's beast of antiquity is making a breakthrough, we, the Kazda clan, will not be interrupting. With that, Kazdada retreated to a distance of 2 kilometers away with his group to look on. They clearly did not intend on going against Jian Chen. A beast of antiquity, who'd have thought that the cub's a beast of antiquity, and it's already reached class 6. Deep envy appeared in Yin Tian's eyes. Beasts of antiquity were extremely rare on the Tianyuan continent, but once they matured they were extremely powerful, known to be invincible among the same class. If there was a beast of antiquity accompanying a person, the person would be able to act with no regard to rules at all on the entire continent in the future. Yin Tian just never thought that the always sleeping white tiger on Jian Chen's shoulder was a beast of antiquity, which made him feel both admiration and envy. Yang Yutian, I'm extremely curious about that beast of antiquity making a breakthrough in the cave. Why don't you let us in and have a look? Zartilos stared at Jian Chen with a smile, yet his eyes flashed with cold light. Jian Chen replied, the white tiger is currently amidst a breakthrough. Whoever approaches the cave will become my enemy, and I will use all my strength to kill them. No one is an exception. Perhaps intentional or otherwise, Jian Chen eyed Yin Tian. Yang Yutian, you're too cocky. Do you know who you're talking to? Even the president of the union can't protect you when you've offended the Tsar family. A middle-aged man behind Zartilos yelled out. Jian Chen scanned past all the people coldly, before sitting down cross-legged at the entrance of the cave. He said, I will kill those who come within a radius of 30 meters mercilessly. The group from the Tsar family all became sheet white in the face. They were actually threatened by someone younger than them, which was a burning insult. Yet Zartilos smiled even wider from anger. I want to see if you, Yang Yutian, are really as strong as the rumors describe you. The surrounding radiant saint force immediately began to gather quickly, condensing a suit of silvery white radiant saint armor on Zartilos. In his left hand, a radiant saint shield also formed. Radiant saint armor. The 20-odd people behind Zartilos all called out together. With a powerful light enveloping them all, they all donned radiant saint armors. Zartilos gave out a sneer, before taking a step forwards, directly towards the cave. Behind him, all the people followed close, each with cautious expressions. Many of them had already condensed radiant saint swords, ready for battle. Just when Tsar Telos crossed the 30-meter boundary, a powerful sliver of killing intent flashed across Jian Chen's eyes. He said with a cold smile, "I just happen to be lacking in some points. Since you've come delivering them obediently, I won't hold back." Several Radiant Saint swords condensed before Jian Chen at the same time, shooting towards the people at the very front of the group like lightning bolts. Radiant Saint sword. Go! The reaction of the Tsar family members were not slow either. Just when Jian Chen struck out, the swords before them also flew out, colliding with Jian Chen's Radiant Saint swords. Chapter 772, Yang Yutian's Strength, 3. With a huge boom, the Radiant Saint swords collided like a white ball of flame exploding. The thick Radiant Saint force turned into a ball of dazzling light, illuminating the entire space. The sharpened Radiant Saint force wreaked havoc in the surroundings like a storm, kicking up stones, creating a dust clouds. Several boulders exploded, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. The 20-odd Radiant Saint Masters all used their Radiant Saint armors and the Radiant Saint shields to receive the havoc-wreaking energy ripples and loose-flying rubble. Jian Chen grabbed at the empty space with a hand, and a huge Radiant Saint shield quickly formed. He then placed it behind him, blocking the entrance of the cave to prevent the energy ripples from surging into the cave and affecting the White Tiger. He did not have any protection for himself, allowing the violent energy to smash wildly against his body. Jian Chen's body was like a pillar separating the sky and the earth. Not only did the violent energy ripples fail to harm him when they collided with his body, it did not even shake him. As the group of people from the Tsar family fended off the energy ripples of Radiant Saint force, Jian Chen had already extended his two hands. With a soft murmur, he said, "Radiant Saint sword." Suddenly, the energy ripples traveling towards Jian Chen came to a sudden halt. It became gentle under the gazes of disbelief from countless Radiant Saint Masters. It quickly condensed into 9 Radiant Saint swords under Jian Chen's forceful control. Swish! 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 With 9 sounds of piercing air, the 9 swords all transformed into streaks of white light, shooting towards 3 Radiant Saint Masters in 3 waves. The first wave destroyed their Radiant Saint shields, and the second wave soon followed. It obliterated the Radiant Saint armor they wore, knocking them flying as they spurted blood, while the final, third wave of Radiant Saint swords arrived, piercing through the people's chests like knives through hot butter. Arg! The 3 people could not help but call out in great pain. Blood spurted from their wounds, dyeing their white clothes a bloody red. In the very moment the swords entered their bodies, an extremely sharp Radiant Saint force residue began to wreak havoc wildly inside their bodies, attacking all signs of life. If they were fighters, they could at least extinguish it with the vast Saint force within them. Too bad they were Radiant Saint Masters. Radiant Saint force had extremely powerful regenerative abilities, but it was unable to remove the sharp Radiant Saint force in their bodies. Just as the 3 of them were overwhelmed by shock, 3 giant pillars of light descended from the sky, enveloping their bodies and taking them away. In just a flash, Tsar Telos group had lost 3 Class 6 Radiant Saint Master. Tsar Telos's complexion darkened immediately as a result while his expression was extremely ugly. He had learned long ago that Yang Yutian was very powerful, but he had never thought that he would be this strong, killing 3 Radiant Saint Masters so easily. Yang Yutian, how dare you injure the people of the Tsar family? Tsar Telos cried out. Yang Yutian's strength astounded him, but he felt no fear within the artifact space since it was impossible for his life to be endangered there. And even if he did leave the Saint artifact, he had the entire Tsar family supporting him. Yang Yutian was someone the Tsar family needed to eliminate anyway, so Tsar Telos did not fear offending him at all. All those present witnessed Jian Chen easily slaughtering 3 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. It stunned them all, while various sounds of exclamations appeared unendingly. Not only is he completely unharmed from the group attack of over 20 Radiant Saint Masters, he even killed off 3 of them in return instantly. Is this Yang Yutian's strength? This Yang Yutian is just too powerful. The rumors are indeed true. Looks like it's true that Yang Yutian killed over 30 Heaven Saint Masters on Fragrance River. He really does have that strength. This Yang Yutian is undebatably the strongest below Class 7. With such strength, probably even Kara Liwei isn't his opponent. Members of the Tsar family, don't think any of you will be placing within the top 10 in this competition. Jian Chen roared at the sky. The surrounding Radiant Saint force began to surge quickly, gathering towards Jian Chen at an unbelievable speed. Afterwards, under Jian Chen's full control, he shot Radiant Saint swords towards the group of people, one after another. Tsar Tilo's expression became stern. They worked together and began an intense battle with Jian Chen. Due to the lesson earlier, they no longer dared to be careless even in the slightest, all using all they had to attack. Radiance burst. Jian Chen roared. Countless droplets condensed in front of him, before spraying towards the surrounding members of the Tsar family. Not only did it repel their swords, it even greatly damaged the Radiant Saint shields protecting them. The light from the shields quickly dulled, while two even broken. The sky full of droplets directly collided with their bodies, punching white dents in the Radiant Saint armor they wore. This radiance burst is so powerful. Witnessing it, a few Radiant Saint Masters spectating the battle remarked dumbfoundedly. Probably only Yang Yutian's radiance burst can be this powerful. An old man in the crowd mumbled. Jian Chen used the radiance burst to keep the people of the Tsar family at bay, before condensing 9 more dazzling Radiant Saint swords. He shot them at another 3 people in the group. With 3 cries of pain, 3 more people had their chests punctured by Radiant Saint swords, before being taken away by the power of the Saint artifact, dropping out of the competition. In the blink of an eye, the original 20-odd people of the Tsar family and the 8 great clans decreased by 6. Only a dozen or so people remained, still embroiled in an intense battle against Jian Chen. Tsar Tilos suddenly turned around and looked at Yun Tian. He bellowed, "Yun Tian, hurry up and do it. What are you waiting for?" Hearing that, a light flickered through his eyes. Yun Tian displayed an expression of hesitance. Jian Chen's strength had greatly exceeded what he had anticipated. Without even using the 3 great arts, he was so strong, absolutely unstoppable. If he did cast the 3 great arts, who could be his opponent? Yun Tian hesitated for a small moment, before a sliver of determination appeared in his eyes. He thought, I can only go all out this time if I want to become president in the future. Also, Kara Liwei should be arriving very soon. When they come, we'll have the ability to resist even if Yang Yutian casts the 3 great arts. Making up his mind, Yun Tian moved immediately. He quickly donned a suit of Radiant Saint armor, before condensing a Radiant Saint shield in front of him. Sensing Yun Tian's actions, the cold light in Jian Chen's eyes shone. He growled, "Senior Yun Tian, you dare to move against me? Yang Yutian, you can't blame your senior. You can only blame that you appeared at a very wrong time. This time, senior needs to prevent you from placing in the top 10 no matter what." Yun Tian said gruffly. With a swing of his hand, a Radiant Saint sword immediately condensed, shooting towards Jian Chen with lightning speed. Jian Chen condensed a Radiant Saint sword in return, smashing the one from Yun Tian. He said expressionlessly, "Then don't blame me for being merciless. Senior Yun Tian, you won't be placing within the top 10 no matter what this time." Yun Tian's complexion darkened and he yelled out coldly, "Yang Yutian, I must admit that you are very strong, but it's still too early for you to say that." As soon as he finished what he was saying, Yun Tian suddenly turned towards the group of people behind him and cried out, "Everyone, when are you going to move? After the deed is done, I'll accept a request from everyone, no one excluded." As soon as Yun Tian finished speaking, another 30-odd people stepped forwards from the crowd of spectators behind. One of them looked towards Yun Tian. "Yun Tian, I hope you keep your word." Throwing out that, the person directly participated in the group attack against Jian Chen. The other people also entered the group fight. In the blink of an eye, those surrounding and attacking Jian Chen multiplied from a dozen or so to 4 dozen or so, greatly increasing Jian Chen's pressure. The situation was going downhill, yet there was not even a sliver of bewilderment on Jian Chen's face. Suddenly, Jian Chen's eyes glowed, and with a finger pointing towards the sky, he cried out, "Judgment Sword." Hearing the two words, all the people attacking Jian Chen changed greatly in expression. "We can't let him cast the arte no matter what. Hurry up and interrupt it," Zartilos cried out. Radiant Saint swords shot from his hand constantly at lightning speed, not at Jian Chen, but at the ever-condensing shape of a sword above him. Just as the swords approached the shape, they exploded with a loud bang, turning into violent ripples of energy which disturbed the condensation of the sword. Afterwards, the expressions of the 50-odd Radiant Saint Masters all reached a rare sternness. They all attacked the sword shape corporealized above Jian Chen without pause. With the endless booms, the sword shape above Jian Chen began to tremble from the consecutive attacks, before slowly disappearing. Jian Chen's judgment sword was disrupted during the charge-up phase. "Junior, I'd like to see how you would repel us without the advantage of the three great arts." Yun Tian laughed aloud. He was complacent, and he seemed to have already seen the light of victory. Chapter 773, Yang Yutian's Strength. 4. Jian Chen looked at Yun Tian, and a sliver of mockery appeared in his eyes. "So what if you can stop me from casting the three great arts? You're able to harm me just because you can stop me? Not even powerful saint rulers can harm me, let alone Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters that aren't even as strong as me." With a flash of white light, over 30 Radiant Saint swords already flew in from all directions as Jian Chen spoke. It cut off any direction Jian Chen could dodge in. "You try to harm me with mere Radiant Saint swords?" Jian Chen roared. This time, he did not dodge and just stood there with his arms open, welcoming the swords to strike him. A faint layer of gold light encased Jian Chen from the primordial god silk. As soon as the swords came in contact with the faint layer of light, they actually began to disappear at a visible rate, turning into nothing in the blink of an eye. All the Radiant Saint force was absorbed by the silk. Seeing that, Yun Tian's originally confident face immediately darkened. He stared at the layer of gold light on Jian Chen with deep envy. He knew that this was definitely due to the protective treasure Jian Chen wore. "If I have this golden silk mail, then the disadvantage of having a frail body of being a Radiant Saint Master will cease exist. Even if I face up against saint rulers, I will have no need to be afraid. I must obtain it." Yun Tian gritted his teeth, already making up his decision that he needed to obtain it no matter what. This defensive treasure really is powerful. No wonder it's something that can block an attack from saint rulers. It actually nullified over 30 Radiant Saint swords from Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters so easily. Zartilos eyed Jian Chen in interest, and he too revealed unconcealable greed in his eyes. He thought, "I must obtain this piece of mail. If I wear it, I'll even be able to escape against saint rulers." Is this Yang Yutian's defensive treasure? It's so powerful. All of the people from the Kazda clan were astounded, and they all eyed Jian Chen avariciously. They wouldn't be the only ones, even saint rulers would be tempted by such a powerful treasure. The primordial god silk absorbed over 30 Radiant Saint swords as soon as they touched it. All the people present to stare wide-eyed and tongue-tied at the faint layer of golden light around Jian Chen as a result. They were all in disbelief. However, Jian Chen did not halt his movements because of this. With a thought, 9 Radiant Saint swords condensed and shot off towards the 3 closest Radiant Saint Masters. It heavily injured them, removing them from the competition by the energy of the artifact. The painful cries from the 3 people startled everyone present, returning them to their senses. Shortly afterwards, the people attacking him all shot backwards, pulling far away from Jian Chen. "Don't be afraid, everyone. After blocking our attacks, the golden armor on Yang Yutian will definitely consume some energy. Let's all attack him and expend the energy of the mail. When the protection is gone, no matter how superhuman Yang Yutian is, he can't resist against the attacks of so many people." Yun Tian called out, before swinging his hand. Another sword condensed, shooting towards Jian Chen. Jian Chen's gaze towards Yun Tian was filled with powerful killing intent. 9 radiant saint swords immediately appeared before him, forming a straight line as they shot towards Yun Tian in a streak of light. We can't let Yang Yutian take us out one by one. Everyone move together and destroy his swords. We'll expend his energy and maintain ours. He definitely can't last too long facing so many of us all by himself. Zartilos also cried out, before immediately condensing 3 radiant saint swords. They shot out towards the 9 swords targeting Yun Tian with lightning speed, destroying 3 of them. Meanwhile, perhaps due to Zartilos' instigation, the surrounding Radiant Saint Masters all condensed Radiant Saint Swords or Radiant Saint Shields to assist Yun Tian. Under the teamwork of over 50 Radiant Saint Masters, Jian Chen's 9 swords were all nullified mid-air, without harming Yun Tian at all. Jian Chen's complexion darkened slightly. None of the surrounding 50-odd people were weak. If they did work together like this, he would struggle to kill any of them unless he successfully casted one of the 3 great arts or exposed his identity as a fighter. He could not expose his fighter identity, while the 3 great arts were the strongest radiant arts that could be cast by Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters. Even though Jian Chen could cast them with some difficulty, the arts would be incomplete, and hence he would need a period of time to charge up. Yet, the arts could be disrupted very easily during this period. As a result, Jian Chen struggled to kill the 50 people with only his strength as a Radiant Saint Master. Brother Yang Yutian, let me help you out. Suddenly, a long roar reverberated from the distance. Several streaks of light approached the area from the distance. The person leading the group was Quan Yukai, who had not appeared ever since they were separated at the ferry. Quan Yukai rode a white cloud, leading several companions as he quickly approached Jian Chen. His gaze was resolute. This time, no matter who the opponent is, I, Quan Yukai, will never give up. It'll be a great deed once I save Brother Yang Yutian from the dangers. Who knows, he might even actually pass on the 3 great arts to me. For the 3 arts, I'll give all I have. Seeing how reinforcements had come for Jian Chen, both Zartilos and Yun Tian immediately darkened in complexion. Zartilos cried out, "This is the Zar family's matters. Please do not participate if you have nothing to do with it. Otherwise, you will become enemies with the Zar family of the City of God." Yun Tian was unwilling to fall behind Zartilos. He also called out, "And my Radiant Saint Master Union. If there is anyone who wants to interfere, you will become enemies with my union." Fuck, why read the background of Yang Yutian's enemies only getting more powerful? Last time it was the 8 clans, and now it's the head of the 8 clans, and I even need to offend the Radiant Saint Master Union. Hurrying over, Quan Yotsai's expression changed slightly. Shortly afterwards, a sliver of doubt appeared in his eyes. No, Yang Yutian is the disciple of the president, so it's impossible to become an enemy of the union. The speaker earlier seems to be the second disciple of the president. Oh, I understand now. Quan Yukai suddenly reached an understanding. He laughed aloud in reply, "Yun Tian, just you is not enough to represent the entire union. Brother Yang Yutian, let me help you. I definitely will not just watch the future successor of the union fall to the dirty schemes of others. You're the future president of the union. You can't be defeated by these people." Yun Tian's complexion became extremely dark. What Quan Yukai had said crossed his bottom line, something he struggled to bear with. "Quan Yukai, there are still many days to come. I, Yun Tian, will remember what happened today," Yun Tian said with gritted teeth. "Yun Tian, you dare to speak so arrogantly, and dare to work against the future president of the union. Don't you think that you'll be able to stay in the union for much longer?" Quan Yukai himself was a stubborn and proud man. Although he feared power, he did not dread it. He seemed to have already accepted the fact that Jian Chen would become the future president, so he did not hold back at all when he spoke. "Quan Yukai, you're looking to die." Yun Tian flew into a flurry of anger. He actually gave up his attack on Jian Chen and shot at Quan Yukai, embroiling in a battle with him very quickly. The Radiant Saint Masters who followed Quan Yukai overstood far away. They did not enter the battle, clearly unwilling to be dragged into the situation. Yun Tian was not weak. He was a person within the top 10 Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters, and could fend off several experts of the same class without much difficulty. With his departure, the force of the group against Jian Chen immediately decreased by 20%, removing a great amount of pressure from Jian Chen. Jian Chen took advantage of the situation. Using the primordial god silk to block all the attacks, he swiftly targeted several people and more Radiant Saint swords quickly condensed. In the blink of an eye he killed another 4 of them, causing them to be taken away by the artifact's energy from the competition. Yun Tian, hurry up and come back. Zartilos' expression changed slightly. If this were to continue, the 50 Radiant Saint Masters on his side would be defeated one by one sooner or later. Yun Tian's complexion changed slightly. He noticed the situation, but he needed to keep Quan Yukai busy. Although Quan Yukai was not among the 10 great Radiant Saint Masters, he was extremely powerful and strong enough to challenge those within the top 10. The situation would only worsen if he charged in and heavily injured people in the group. At this moment, Yun Tian seemed to sense something. Using a Radiant Saint shield to block Quan Yotsai's attacks, he turned around and looked into the distance. He saw another few people quickly approach the area. The person leading was a beauty in her 20s who possessed an appearance that could outshine the moon and cause fish to drown. Yun Tian immediately became overjoyed. He called out hurriedly, "Miss Kara Liwei just happens to come at the right time. Quickly help out Zartilos and the other to handle Yang Yutian. After it's done, Yun Tian will definitely not forget the conditions he has mentioned." Those who came just happened to be the people from the Kara clan, led by Kara Liwei. They charged straight at Jian Chen. Seeing the reinforcements from the Kara clan, the people who battled Jian Chen immediately relaxed slightly. Even a sliver of a relaxed expression appeared on Zartilos' face. He knew extremely well just how strong Kara Liwei was. If Yang Yutian was ignored, Kara Liwei was the strongest below Class 7, the absolute overlord among Class 6. Chapter 774, A strike from a Saint King. Kara Liwei directly charged into the battle with the Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters from her clan, all with Radiant Saint armors and 1.5 meter wide Radiant Saint shields on their left arms. Jian Chen furrowed his eyebrows and suddenly raised his head to eye Kara Liwei. A cold light flickered in his eyes, but shortly afterwards, his pupils constricted. A weird smile appeared on his face, and under his full-strength attacks, another 3 people were taken away by the power of the Saint artifact. Kara Liwei, hurry up and attack Yang Yutian with all you've got. Waste his energy. Zartilos bellowed. He could already vaguely feel that they couldn't last any longer. If more of his own people were killed by Yang Yutian, he would definitely be able to escape. Kara Liwei remained silent for the entire journey. She flew directly at Zartilos and cried out, "Kill!" The 6 members behind Kara Liwei and herself all condensed Radiant Saint swords and shot them out with lightning speed. However, the swords did not fly towards Jian Chen, but instead targeted Zar family and the 8 clans, with Zartilos himself receiving Kara Liwei's personal attacks. The sudden change in the situation caused all the people from the Zar family to vary in expression. They never thought that the people of the Kara clan would move against them, yet it was already too late for them to do anything in defense. Being caught off guard, they were struck by the swords from the experts from the Kara clan. With 7 loud booms, 7 experts of the Zar family were heavily injured, with Zartilos included. Their Radiant Saint armors shattered, which caused them to fly backwards as they vomited blood. Kara Liwei, what are you doing? Yun Tian, currently battling Quan Yukai, was greatly shocked and turned sheet white. He gave out a worried cry. Kara Liwei was something extremely important. Her existence would determine exactly which direction victory would sway. If she helped Yang Yutian, their plans this time would be an utter failure. Karaliwei, what are you trying to do? Zartilos stood up with a sheet-white face. A trail of blood ran from his corner of mouth, while his face was so white that it was terrifying. Karaliwei's strength was greater than him, so the unexpected attack directly heavily injured him. Karaliwei ignored Zartilos. She looked towards Jianchen and called out, Yang Yutian, I, Karaliwei, represent the Kara clan in lending a helping hand. Karaliwei, you broke your word. You clearly agreed to help me handle Yang Yutian. From far away, Yun Tian roared from the edge of insanity. His voice was filled with unwillingness and rage. Karaliwei was not angered and instead he laughed gently, Yun Tian, you really are confused. I've only agreed for you to lead us to find Yang Yutian, not to assist you in dealing with him. Karaliwei, Yun Tian was absolutely exasperated and burned with the fury of rage, but he failed to find the words. In the end, he only roared out in anger, Karaliwei, I hope you don't regret it. Yun Tian's eyes were bloodshot and extremely unwilling to accept the situation. They were just about to succeed, but he never thought that Karaliwei would suddenly side with Jianchen, causing the victory that was originally his to become Jianchen's. Karaliwei's group immediately sucked away a majority of Jianchen's pressure. He clasped his hands towards Karaliwei, Miss Karaliwei, I will remember your kindness today, and I will definitely return the favor. Karaliwei smiled happily, Yang Yutian, I'm taking great risks to come help you out. I hope that you won't forget what I've done for you today. Jianchen did not continue. He quickly retreated, before extending a finger at the sky, and with a powerful voice, Judgment Sword. This was the second time Jianchen was casting the Judgment Sword. The surrounding radiant saint force began to gather quickly, soon forming the shape of a huge sword above Jianchen. Hurry up and stop him. You can't let him successfully cast it. Zartilos endured his heavy injuries and cried out, before condensing a radiant saint sword at Jianchen with some difficulty. Zartilos, do you think I'm invisible? With a high-pitched voice and the shake of a hand, Karaliwei shot out a radiant saint sword to block Zartilos' attack. Afterwards, the 6 radiant saint masters of the Kara clan all used their full strength to cover Jianchen, earning him some precious time. There was no longer anybody who could get in the way of condensing the judgment sword this time. It allowed Jianchen to cast it successfully. Immediately, a powerful pressure pervaded the surroundings. The terrifying ripples of energy within the sword seemed to possess the power of destroying the world, causing all those present to be absolutely astounded. Crap, retreat. The people surrounding Jianchen all moved backwards in shock. The people of the Tsar family were no exception either. Zartilos' complexion became ugly. He stared at the huge sword above Jianchen with a dark complexion, with deep envy burning in his eyes. Shortly afterwards, he no longer bothered to deal with Karaliwei, retreating quickly. Jianchen narrowed his eyes, immediately locking onto the group of people from the Tsar family. Controlling the sword with his mind, it chopped towards the people with the strength of lightning. As the sword cut through the air, it left behind a trail of magnificent white light, while its speed also reached the utmost limit. In the moment the sword lashed out, the targeted radiant saint masters felt like they were trapped by an invisible force, unable to move at all. They could only watch helplessly as the sword chopped down. The people were frightened to the point where all their blood had drawn from their faces. Facing the huge sword, not only did they fail to dodge, they did not even have a single thought of resisting. The vast size and power of the sword had completely obliterated the final line of defense in their minds. They felt extremely close to death. In the crucial moment of life or death, several huge pillars of light appeared, taking them away. As for the sword, it continued onwards with no decrease in power, and struck the ground heavily. Boom! With the powerful sound, the entire ground began to shake violently. The sword chopped out a crack several meters wide and over 10 meters deep, extending up to a kilometer in length. God damn it, why is Yang Yutian's judgment sword so powerful? Witnessing it, blood also drained from Yun Tian's face, who was caught in a fight with Quan Yukai. He soon gave up on fight altogether, fleeing. The plan to handle Yang Yutian is an absolute failure. If this continues, there's only death. If I don't go now, there won't be any more chances to flee. Yun Tian thought. The surging energy hung mightily in the sky. Under Jian Chen's control, the huge sword turned into a streak of white light, shooting towards Tsar Tilos' group. Even though Tsar Tilos' complexion was dark, he did not become alarmed and bewildered. He only took out a thumb-sized piece of jade from his bosom and sneered at Jian Chen. Yang Yutian, you definitely won't succeed today. This piece of jade was gifted to me from an ancestor of my Tsar family, and it contains a blow from him. Even if you have that treasure protecting you, you won't be able to resist against the attack of a Saint King. With that, Tsar Tilos allowed a drop of his blood to fall on the stone without any hesitation. Immediately, a terrifyingly powerful pressure originated from the stone. The world seemed to shake before this pressure, while the surrounding radiant Saint Masters all felt like a boulder pressed against their chests. They could not help but spurt out a mouthful of blood, shooting backwards in retreat. The piece of jade was the final trump card from the Tsar family to prevent Jian Chen from reaching Class 7. It would not be used if it were not for a critical moment, but currently, Jian Chen was nothing less than the threat from the current president for the Tsar family. Once Jian Chen successfully reached Class 7, he would become an extremely great obstacle to the Tsar family's plans of taking over the Union. Jian Chen's pupils constricted abruptly. His expression became stern for the first time, and he bellowed, "This is the power of a Saint King." Chaotic force began to surge turbulently from his chaotic Niden, filling up every corner of Jian Chen's body and pushing his chaotic body to the limit. At the same time, the huge judgment sword gave up on attacking others and instead rushed directly at Tsar Tilos under Jian Chen's control, hoping to prevent Tsar Tilos from releasing the Saint King's power. Yang Yutian, it's all too late. Before the ancestors' power, even the Saint artifact won't be able to protect you. Tsar Tilos laughed aloud. The surging energy from the piece of jade condensed into a huge, 3-meter-long finger, before making a pointing gesture at Jian Chen. With the finger's gesture, time seemed to stop and space seemed to freeze. In that very moment, the finger seemed like the only thing in the world, and anything colors before the finger became dull. The judgment sword turned into nothingness as it met the finger's gesture, disappearing into the air without even ripples of energy. An invisible strand of world force passed through where the judgment sword was and blasted through the defense of the primordial god Silk, striking Jian Chen's chest heavily. Jian Chen could not resist at all before the finger. The finger was a strike from a Saint King, containing all the abilities of a Saint King. It locked up his presence, chained up his body, and restricted him of any room to escape. Spurt. Jian Chen sprayed out a mouthful of blood at the sky. His clothes had already disintegrated, revealing the golden silk mail made from the primordial god Silk. Currently the armor had already become dull and without light, as if it had consumed all of its energy. Jian Chen shot backwards like a cannonball, colliding heavily with the rock face behind him. With a great boom, the entire mountain range trembled gently. Jian Chen was already deeply embedded in the depths of the mountain, creating a 100-meter-long hole in the tough rock. Stuck within the mountain, Jian Chen constantly vomited blood. The strength of the Tsar family ancestor was much greater than the king from the Gilligan clan. With just a finger, not only did it destroy the defense of the primordial god Silk, but it even broke his chaotic body, turning his inner organs and ribs into smithereens. If it were not for the primordial god Silk nullifying a part of the force, it was extremely likely for him to be even more heavily injured. Chapter 775, Roar of the Beast God. Tsar Tilos' piece of jade contained a single strike from a Saint King. After the attack, the huge finger disappeared, but the effects from it were massive. Not only did it heavily injure Jian Chen, even the ground within a radius of 100 meters sank by a meter. This all still occurred despite the fact that the Saint King's energy was extremely concentrated, which did not leak out in the slightest. If all the power of the finger was released, nothingness would be all that remained within the area of sunken ground. No one would have been able to escape death. The surrounding people all stood stupefied, stunned by the might of a Saint King's strike. They were not the targets, but it left behind an everlasting mark of shock in their hearts. Far away, Yun Tian also stopped fleeing. He was overwhelmed by surprise and remarked with a trembling voice, "Who would have thought that the ancestor of the Tsar family actually gave Tsar Telos an attack of his? Looks like they're even more determined to eliminate Yang Yutian than I am." Afterwards, a sliver of excitement appeared on his face, and he thought in joy, Yang Yutian must be dead no matter what this time. No matter how strong his defensive treasure is, it can't be enough to block a Saint King's blow. This defensive treasure definitely cannot end up in the hands of the Tsar family. With that, Yun Tian immediately gave up on his escape, rushing towards Jian Chen as fast as he could. "Yang Yutian, with a blow from the ancestor, you couldn't possibly survive even with your treasured mail. Just the force of collision is enough to turn you to smithereens. Your treasure is now the Tsar family's." Tsar Telos chuckled aloud, before quickly flying into the tunnel created by Jian Chen's body. He was certain that Jian Chen had fallen to his ancestor's attack, that even the saint artifact was not enough to protect him. Tsar Telos directly charged into the tunnel created when Jian Chen was knocked flying. 100 meters in, he finally found Jian Chen. Currently, Jian Chen was sheet white while his eyes were closed. He was already unconscious while the blood from his mouth had dyed the silk mail red. "From now onwards, this treasure belongs to my Tsar family. I have the merit of killing Yang Yutian, and with my position in the family, the ancestor will definitely reward it to me." Surging joy and greed appeared in Tsar Telos' eyes as he knelt down and extended his hands towards the golden silk mail on Jian Chen. Roar! Suddenly, an earth-shaking sound resounded. Its loudness reverberated through the entire region, actually extending outwards in all directions in the form of visible sound waves. The entire mountain range trembled violently from the roar. Thick cracks immediately appeared on the mountains that had stood for tens of thousands of years, spreading out like spiderwebs. It soon covered the entire mountain range, causing many mountains to directly collapse and fall apart. The ground shook violently, with huge cracks immediately crisscrossing the ground where the terrifying sound waves passed by. Countless vegetation and trees turned to dust, scattering in the air. Even the misty white sky was affected greatly. The power of the roar was nothing below a full-powered strike from a saint ruler. With just a single roar, mountains collapsed and the ground cracked while the sky shook, as if it was the end of the world. Tsar Telos, who was just about to take Jian Chen's silk mail, jerked suddenly. Soon afterwards, his eyes dulled, instantly becoming lifeless. His entire body collapsed on the floor with a loud sound, as if he had lost all power to his body. The great roar shook Tsar Telos' soul directly, to the point it had dispersed, killing him instantly. The great roar seemed to be able to target specific people. All the radiant saint masters who attacked Jian Chen together outside the cave also jerked, before their eyes dulled. In just a moment they went from standing to collapsed on the ground, following Tsar Telos' footsteps. The roar had dispersed their souls, killing them instantly. Even the power of the saint artifact was unable to prevent it. As for Kara Liwei's group who assisted Jian Chen, as well as the other people who watched on as bystanders, they too were greatly affected. All of them stared blankly at that moment, their minds already ceasing any thoughts. The powerful shockwaves of the roar deeply shook their soul, causing them to feel fear from the very depths of their existence. Arg! Suddenly, a painful cry appeared in the distance. It was Yun Tian's cry of pain, who was currently flying over on a white cloud from the distance. He clutched his head with his hands tightly, his face filled with pain. Soon after, he dropped out of the sky, landing heavily on the ground and snapping several bones in his body. As Yun Tian was further away, the killing force of the roar had already greatly decreased when it reached his ears. It only made him feel like his head was exploding, as if his very soul was being sliced at by someone. If he was where Zartilos was, so close to the roar, his soul would have collapsed just like Zartilos, dying instantly. From the cave Jian Chen had defended, a huge 3-meter-tall and 9-meter-long white tiger emerged with its chest high, like a lord carrying the bearing of a king. On the back of the tiger was a pair of feathered, tightly furled, snow-white wings, filled with nobility and sacredness, signifying that it was vastly different from others. The white tiger walked out of the cave with slow steps. Its gaze was locked onto Yun Tian, who was several kilometers away, and a powerful killing intent appeared in its eyes. Yun Tian endured the head-splitting pain as he stood up from the ground. He stared blankly at the huge tiger by the cave and immediately understood where the earth-shaking roar originated from. He said with a trembling voice, "Bea, beast of antiquity." Feeling the powerful killing intent from the white tiger, the very depths of Yun Tian's heart shivered. He was overwhelmed by fear as soon as he remembered the force of the white tiger's roar, and without any hesitation, he pulled out his ancient jade pendant from his bosom. He cried out, "I forfeit." As soon as he finished, a giant pillar of light fell from the sky and sucked Yun Tian away. Just as Yun Tian disappeared, the white tiger several kilometers away appeared right next to where he was standing before. With great strength seemingly capable of ripping open space, a paw of sharp claws swiped through, hitting only empty air. Roar! The white tiger gave out another earth-shaking roar at the sky. Its voice was filled with insuppressible rage. It immediately leapt high into the sky, directly catching up to Yun Tian, who was being pulled into the sky by the white light, unwilling to let him go. Sigh. At this moment, a helpless sigh appeared in the sky. Shortly afterwards, a huge palm quickly condensed, covering the sky and blotting out the sun. It created a wall in the sky, separating Yun Tian from the giant tiger. The tiger collided heavily with the palm blocking its way, immediately producing a thunderous sound. The powerful collision knocked the huge tiger backwards, while the giant palm remained where it was, unaffected at all. Roar! The white tiger looked at the sky in aggression, actually charging at the giant palm once again. However, Yun Tian had already disappeared from the artifact space in the white light after it was obstructed the first time. Since he was gone already, the huge hand also turned back into nothingness, causing the white tiger to just hit empty air. The tiger gave out a roar of unwillingness. It shook the world with the aura of a beast god radiating from it. All the Class 7 and 8 magical beasts trapped within the artifact space became stern, and even fear appeared in the depths of a few Class 7 magical beasts' eyes. A while later, the white tiger slowly calmed down. With a flash, it arrived before the tunnel that Jian Chen was embedded in with an unbelievable speed. It quickly shrunk smaller, before entering the tunnel with another flash. The tiger emerged from the tunnel with the unconscious Jian Chen in his mouth soon after. It eyed all the other Radiant Saint Masters with a glare filled with menace, before disappearing into the cave that Jian Chen had carved out. All the Radiant Saint Masters represent shivered from the white tiger's glance, and could not help but retreat a certain distance backwards. They were all sheet white, without a trace of blood in their face. The white tiger had just reached Class 6, yet its powerful aura caused people to even suspect it was Class 7 instead. When everyone slowly calmed down, they discovered that the people on the floor, unable to get up, were dead. It stunned them all, while their fear for the giant white tiger only increased. Within the cave, Jian Chen lay on the ground unconscious. Beside him was the tiger that had shrunken to a meter in size, who paced about anxiously and gave out deep growls from time to time. It seemed to be worrying for Jian Chen. At this very moment, the white tiger's gaze froze. It suddenly turned around and looked backwards, only to find that a white-robed, middle-aged man had appeared without a sound. The white tiger narrowed its eyes as it stared fixedly at the man. Hostility poured from its eyes. Somehow it seemed to know that the giant palm that had obstructed him before was from this man. The middle-aged man gave out a soft sigh. With a bitter face, it looked at the white tiger and said, "Winged tiger god, the overlord is injured very heavily. Even though the Overlord's body is extremely tough, it'll take at least 2 or 3 days for him to recover. With my help, the Overlord can wake up very quickly." As he spoke, the man pointed with his finger. The origin energy of Radiant Saint Force shot out, directly entering Jian Chen's body. The origin energy of Radiant Saint Force was the energy of the Saint artifact itself, something that had an owner. It could be used to heal people, but it could not be absorbed and used by others. As the strand of origin energy entered Jian Chen's body, his heavy injuries began to heal at an unbelievable rate. In just a few short seconds, his destroyed organs were completely healed, and with another few more seconds his shattered bones slowly mended. Jian Chen was completely healed in the matter of a dozen or so seconds. The healing effect of the origin energy was something far beyond Radiant Saint Force. As he healed, the unconscious Jian Chen slowly woke up. He immediately discovered the adult-sized tiger and the artifact spirit in the moment he opened his eyes. The artifact spirit knelt on one knee and said earnestly, "Please forgive me, Overlord. Due to the ancient vow with Argenti, this one must ensure the safety of all competitors, which was why this one had prevented the winged tiger god's pursuit." When the several dozen competitors fell to the winged tiger god's previous roar, this one already broke the ancient vow once. This one absolutely cannot break it a second time, because once the vow is broken thrice, this one will cease to exist. Chapter 776. Calm before the storm. Jian Chen did not care about the artifact spirit helping the competitors escape at all. He did not feel that the spirit was in the wrong. After all, protecting the competitors was the spirit's responsibility. Radiant Saint Masters were not as common as fighters, let alone Class 6 Radiant Saint Masters. They could not afford to lose any of them. Jian Chen stood up and carefully checked his entire body. When he discovered that all his wounds were already completely healed, a sliver of shock appeared in his heart. Although he was unconscious before, he knew exactly how bad all the wounds on his body were. Even with the terrifying regeneration of his chaotic body, these injuries would take at least a day or two to completely heal. Yet, though he clearly felt that it was less than half an hour ago that he was injured, his body was completely healed. It was quite unbelievable. Even Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters could not achieve such a godly speed of healing. After all, he had just received an attack from a Saint King. If it were not for the terrifying defense of his chaotic body, he would struggle to even survive an attack from a Saint Ruler, and if he did end up surviving, he would need to spend up to several years, or even decades, to heal. At this moment, Jian Chen vaguely remembered that there was an extremely pure Radiant Saint Force that traveled through him while he was unconscious. He could not help but have a gleam of light flash through his eyes as he looked at the man. Artifact spirit, was I healed using the origin energy of Radiant Saint Force? The artifact spirit nodded, "Yes, Overlord. That was the Saint artifact's origin energy, but unfortunately it's already been refined by this one and no one else can use it. Otherwise, this one would be able to help Overlord in reaching Class 7. Although the artifact spirit was like a god within the artifact, it remained filled with dread and respect towards Jian Chen. Even though in his eyes Jian Chen was still very weak, because the artifact spirit had already been utterly terrified by the sword spirits, he did not dare to show any disrespect at all. How could the person who was referred to as master by the sword spirits be someone ordinary? A sliver of disappointment appeared in Jian Chen's eyes. The artifact spirit soon left after being thanked. With the spirit's departure, the only people left in the cave was Jian Chen and the white tiger. Jian Chen stood up and stared at the human-sized tiger with complicated emotions. In his eyes, there was joy as he sighed emotionally, "Xiao Bai, you're now much more formidable than before." The human-sized tiger was indeed much more formidable than before. He carried the air of a king, a respected lord of great status, someone who led thousands upon thousands of horses and men. Amarar, Xiao Bai gave out a deep growl. It rubbed its big head affectionately against Jian Chen's face. Even though it was Class 6 now, Jian Chen's status, as always, remained the same to it. Currently Xiaobai seemed like a gentle little lamb, greatly different from the powerful, vicious beast that had dispersed the souls of several dozen radiant Saint Masters, pursued Yun Tian, and opposed the artifact spirit. Jian Chen's gaze towards the tiger was filled with gentleness. Although Xiaobai had only followed him for a few years, Jian Chen had watched the tiger grow to such a level from a cub who could not even walk. Their relationship was deep, like a father's and son's, much more complicated than what ordinary people could imagine. Jian Chen rubbed Xiaobai's furry head before pulling out and donning a clean white robe from his space ring. He said, "Xiaobai, the purpose we came here for isn't completed yet. Let's go deal with the proper business first. We can't just let people collect those points like this." With that, Jian Chen finished putting on his clothes. He walked towards the exit of the cave. The white tiger's large body shrank quickly, becoming the size of a small cat once again. With a light leap, it landed solidly on Jian Chen's shoulder, lying there idly. Jian Chen smiled, before affectionately rubbing the white tiger's fist-sized head. He arrived outside. Currently it had only been half an hour since Jian Chen was injured, so the radiant Saint Masters that had gathered outside to look on had yet to fully disperse. No matter if it was Tsar Tilo's Saint King strike, or the roar of a beast of antiquity ending the souls of several dozen people, the whole matter had dealt an extremely heavy blow to their hearts. The moment Jian Chen emerged from the cave and appeared before everyone, all the people gathered outside shuddered. They unconsciously retreated a distance, and stared at Jian Chen like they were staring at a monster. Their faces were filled with disbelief. None of them could believe that after taking a strike from a Saint King, not only did Jian Chen survive, but he had even recovered completely so quickly. He seemed like he was completely fine, as if the attack had not hurt him at all. Why's this? Jian Chen was clearly heavily injured. Even if he didn't die, it definitely would have been unpleasant. How did he fully recover so quickly? Currently, similar thoughts appeared in the minds of all the people. Even Kara Liwei and Quan Yukai, who hurried over from the distance, were stunned by this. However, even more gazes gathered on the currently cat-sized white tiger on Jian Chen's shoulder. Due to the white tiger's gentle-looking appearance on Jian Chen's shoulder, all the radiant Saint Masters present could not help but feel envy and admiration in their heart. They all sighed that Yang Yutian was just too lucky to actually be so deeply connected with a beast of antiquity. Jian Chen looked around before quickly focusing on the specks of white light floating in the sky. The specks of white light were the points from the radiant Saint Masters who had ganged up on Jian Chen. After having their souls obliterated by the white tiger's roar, all of the points they had collected naturally burst out. There were over 1,000 points. The points floated in the air, but no one dared to go collect it. Glancing over the points floating in the air, Jian Chen revealed a sliver of joy. He did not hold back at all, immediately collecting some of them. Very soon Jian Chen's points exceeded 700, a value high enough to stably stand within the top 10. Jian Chen stopped his collection of points. Looking towards a section of the crowd, he cried out, "Quan Yukai." Hearing his name being called out, Quan Yukai involuntarily jerked, before immediately flying out of the crowd with a dazzling smile. At first he glanced over the white tiger on Jian Chen's shoulder in fear, before looking at Jian Chen with a smile that stretched from ear to ear. "Brother Yang Yutian, I never thought you'd still remember Quan Yukai. It's overwhelming me with honor. If there is anything Brother Yang Yutian needs me for, I will definitely give it all I have." Although Jian Chen's friendship with Quan Yukai was not very deep, Quan Yukai had come out to help him fend off enemies under the risk of offending both the Tsar family and Yun Tian. No matter what, Jian Chen could not forget this, even though he knew that Quan Yukai had done it for the three great radiant arts. "Quan Yukai, I already have enough points. Take the rest of it, it should be enough to get you into the top 10. Jian Chen said indifferently. Quan Yukai was overjoyed. After thanking him many times, he immediately began to collect the remaining points in a flurry. As for the radiant Saint Masters that had followed Quan Yukai here, they all wore expressions of regret. If they had known earlier that the remuneration would be so great, they definitely would not have chosen to just watch on. Yang Yutian, your injuries? Kara Liwei stared at Jianxin in both surprise and bewilderment. Even though it was happening in front of her eyes, she struggled to believe that Jianxin could recover so quickly from a Saint King strike. Jianxin clasped his hands at Kara Liwei. Thank you for Miss Kara Liwei's concern. My injuries have already completely healed and they're no longer a problem. I definitely will not forget Miss Kara Liwei's kindness in helping out earlier. Afterwards, all the Radiant Saint Masters dispersed one by one, but Jianxin did not leave. Instead, he returned to the cave, waiting quietly for the competition to end and the artifact space to close up. Now that he had collected enough points, placing in the top 10 was something set in stone. He did not need to continue to fight with people for mere points. Quan Yukai did not leave either. Instead, he stayed behind with Jianxin shamelessly, but he ended up becoming Jianxin's manpower. Under Jianxin's orders, Quan Yukai buried the several dozen Radiant Saint Masters who had been killed by the White Tiger's roar, while the space rings they carried all ended up with Jianxin. Kara Liwei did not stay with Jianxin and instead continued to pursue the remaining competitors, collecting their points. With all that had happened, Jianxin's name became even more well-known among the Radiant Saint Masters, and the matter about the Beast of Antiquity was naturally learned by everyone. He could anticipate that once the competition ended and all the competitors were sent out, the news of Yang Yutian's Beast of Antiquity would spread across the entire Holy Empire and even to further lands in an extremely short amount of time. Jianxin did not do anything at all to stop this. This was because he knew that the identity of the winged tiger god would not be exposed so easily, due to the extremely low number of people who actually knew about the winged tiger god. In addition, the identity of a beast of antiquity was not necessarily bad for the white tiger, as it helped it conceal its true identity. What really made Jianxin worry was how he was going to handle the Tsar family after leaving the artifact. Outside the artifact space, white light constantly flashed in the huge square outside the headquarters of the Radiant Saint Union in the City of God. With each flash, a person appeared in the empty square. These people were the competitors who had failed within the artifact space and were sent out by the artifact's energy. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.